A question often raised in left-wing circles is that of the unity of the left. According to those who raised this question, it'd be desirable if everyone on the vast and very vaguely defined left could unite to form some kind of giant left-wing organization which would somehow encompass everyone from social democrats to anarchists to Marxist-Leninist Maoists. While this kind of left unity certainly comes across as a great slogan, it papers over the very real principled opposition between revolutionaries and reformists on the left. While some who promote this idea are genuinely well intentioned, such as those who are new to left wing politics and who don't yet fully understand why there are so many different left wing ideologies, the slogan of left unity is too often advanced in an attempt to bring revolutionaries under the leadership of reformism, an attempt to rally radically different sections of the left behind their chosen representatives of parliamentarism in an unprincipled unity, which historically hasn't worked out so well for revolutionaries. But as Lenin points out, the slogan of left unity is a popular one, and therefore revolutionaries must deal with it comprehensively to put to bed any misconceptions of elitism, puritanism, or ivory towers, and outline the true basis for the different forms of unity of revolutionary and progressive forces that exist, rooted firmly in the science of Marxism, rather than bourgeois liberal co-optational approaches. And importantly, there are different types of left unity. Not just the drive for one big tent left-wing organisation, but also single-issue tactical unity, unity in mass organisations of the United Front, and unity within revolutionary parties themselves. As explained by Lenin, what's necessary for the success of the revolution is primarily the unity of Marxists. Marxist unity is based around the unity of revolutionary principles and the formation of a revolutionary party of the new type to lead that struggle. In order to bring about principled unity between the revolutionaries and the broader progressive forces, the Revolutionary Party establishes a united front as the organ of bringing the broad masses into the struggle. Below the unity of the party and the united front, there can also be a tactical unity of broader left-wing forces on single-issue campaigns, such as fighting fascism. So today, we're not going to be discussing whether or not this or that group on the left can be friends. We're instead going to dive a bit deeper into the matter from a Marxist strategic perspective and take a look at the three main forms of unity, starting with wide-reaching tactical unity, then narrowing in slightly to the united front, and finally concluding with the highest form of left unity, the unity of the Revolutionary Party itself.
Welcome to RBN Fridays. I'm your host for today. I'm CJ. I don't always come to you on Fridays, but sometimes I do. I'm the elusive one, or me, maybe Rome and I. As far as schedule-wise with these podcasts, Rome is the most infrequent. And he just pops on when he can and when he has the time, and then I'm the one who comes to you, but just I don't know the time and the day. Sometime today's one of those times. I felt like the topic was hot because of the interview that Brie did on Bad Faith yesterday, and I wanted to, even though the vast majority of the interview is not about left unity, I wanted to take her titling and sort of speak about that first, and then we're going to get into so we're going to watch the interview backwards. We're going to watch the unification stuff first, so at the end, like well into it, over an hour before they get into it, and then we'll kind of dive into the Cenk is the most delusional person on the planet. But let me toss up the graphic. Actually, before I do that, let me just mention the types of allyship coalitions. And this is from, I think this is Marxist Paul, if you wanted to look him up on YouTube, Marxist Paul. It's an Irish revolutionary. And the title of the video is called Left Unity, When, Where, Why, a Marxist Strategic perspective. So if you want to go find this video. But these are the types, because this is one of the first things when we're talking about a unification. Well, what do you mean by unification? What are we doing in this coalition? What are the boundaries of this coalition? And when we're talking about it and putting it on paper and thinking about it strategically, these are the three types. Tactical unity, which we're actually seeing with the Palestinian the pro-Palestinian movement, that is called a tactical unity. And then it's the united front, unity of the revolutionaries and progressives. That's when progressives and revolutionaries and what we more say progressive, social democrats, and maybe radicals or non-establishment unite. That's a united front. And then then the Revolutionary Party is when this is a uniting of all Marxists, of all true believers, of all those who practice, who understand or follow the ideology. So that's the three types. But again, because we're not aligned the same ideology, you can wipe out that last one, the Revolutionary Party. That's not the one we're talking about when the question by Brie is saying, can the left reunite? Because that's the first question we must answer is who is she referring to when she says the left? And this is funny because what discussion group I was in? It might have been the post-duopoly left discussion group I was in. And I was like, well, that's what we have to find, because this is before we had watched the interview. It was just upcoming. Or maybe it was playing at the time. And it was like, well, what does she mean by left? What is the discussion about left? Is it uniting progressives and liberals? Uniting progressives who stayed with the Democratic Party with progressives who have left the Democratic Party? Are you uniting that? And it seems to me throughout the conversation, it seems like that may be more of what they're talking about, just based on what they're saying. They don't explicitly say we're not talking about radicals and non-establishment, but based on some of the things they're saying, it doesn't feel like that's what they're talking about. And when we get to the interview, we'll talk about that some more. So, we'll be talking about this in the sense of what they're literally talking about in the interview, which I believe is uniting progressives, non-democrat progressives, and progressive Democrats. That's what I hear. And you guys tell me if I'm wrong. But more broadly, let me see. Do I want to talk? Yeah, let's get into some of the detail before we bring up the video. So, right here, when we're talking about single issue, the tactical unity, you can see that displayed right now in the Palestinian, the pro-Palestinian movement. That's where you see a tactical unity. It's a single issue. Just Palestine, stopping a genocide is more in it. Not just Palestine overall, because that's where we start beginning to differ. Is it stopping and ending this genocidal military campaign? This is a single issue campaign, tactical unity. And we didn't even really have to discuss it. We didn't come together as a group, but you see everybody who is taking a stand for Palestine against this genocide, and you look around in that battlefield and you'll see Cenk, you'll see Crystal Ball, you're gonna see Jimmy Dore, you're gonna see Briahna, you're gonna see the Vanguard, you're gonna see RBN. Even if we all showed up, you get what I'm saying? So this, even without a sort of formal discussion, we are all in this tactical unity. This is what's possible. This is what Marxists talk about when we're talking about having allyship, when we're talking about coalitions with liberals and progressives. We're talking about this on a single issue. I think one of the examples you gave in the video was fascism, like fighting fascism. But then that presents this question. I thought it was very fast. I thought it would be interesting to discuss. We have rainbow flag fascists saying the only fascism right now is the red fascism, and liberals, progressives largely align with that. So in the video, when it says fighting stuff like fascism, what are we talking about in this situation we're in right now? Because as we're saying, Donald Trump is fascist, Joe Biden administration and the Zionists who bought all of the government are banning TikTok because people are learning the truth and going around the corporate military CIA industrial complex narrative, which is real fascism. So from the perspective of what the video said, from our perspective, non-establishment radicals, we're saying the fascist fight is against the Biden administration right now. That's the fascist fight. But there's not liberals and progressives that are joining us in this fascist fight against the Biden administration. Instead, they're saying, no. The bigger fascist fight is against Trump. So we're literally at this crossroads, and I'm going to let him play this last 2 minutes. I'm going to let him talk about this again. This last 2 minutes of the video. Actually, I do want to discuss parts of the video. So let's start from the beginning, because there is some other things I did just want to point out before we get into discussion, because we're framing this, we're using the Briahna Joy Gray video or interview with Cenk Uygur to frame a broader discussion that is needed on in groups of the left. Because we bring this up, radicals or non-established will bring these topics up, but progressives and liberals and those who are aligned with those people don't really join in when we have those conversations on our own. So when they broach the question, we as non-establishment and radicals have to jump on it, because this is the time we have their ear to discuss these types of things. So this is a good opportunity right here to do that and discuss this in a more strategic sense, not just as another stream conversation, but to really take the opportunity to have, while we have everybody here who may be progressive liberals, who may be social democrats or democratic socialists or communists, anarchists. Hopefully we have a little bit of everything. If you label yourself any of those, put it in there. Labels aren't the top important thing, but in this context, it is kind of fun and interesting to talk about that. So whatever you label yourself, if it's a combination of things, just don't put a whole definition. Try to keep it simple so I can toss them up there so people can easily say, oh, a democratic socialist, get that, a socialist, this, whatever it is. Please try to keep it simple. I'll toss some of them up. I forget what I was just about to show. Yeah, let's go back to the video then. So let's play, and then I'll bring up the parts that I want to discuss, and we'll move on to the interview. So let me just read this. This is from Vladimir, or this is from Lenin. Unity is a great thing and a great slogan, but what the workers' cause needs is the unity of Marxists, not unity between Marxists and opponents of distorters of Marxism. That is a very poignant point, but let's continue the video.
A question often raised in left-wing circles is that of the unity of the left. According to those who raised this question, it'd be desirable if everyone on the vast and very vaguely defined left could unite to form some kind of giant left-wing organisation which would somehow encompass everyone from social democrats to anarchists to Marxist-Leninist Maoists. While this kind of left unity certainly comes across as a great slogan, it papers over the very real principled opposition between revolutionaries and reformists on the left. While some who promote this idea are genuinely well-intentioned, such as those who are new to left-wing politics.
Yes, and I do believe, posing the question, I do believe Brie is in good faith. I don't, he gives two examples of the two types of people who usually pose this sort of question, is those that are genuinely thinking of good-hearted and it's coming from a good perspective, and I think that is Brie in that context. But then there are those who are not Brie, who are not and I would say almost even a lot of the Bernie Sanders industrial complex, when they're talking about uniting, generally is from a good place. I would say, I wouldn't say generally is for something, but I would say TYT would be a different. I would say this different to say TYT because of the Katzenberg money. So I would say he might be the second half of this part that is discussed here. Let me just rewind it so you can get the full context here. Here we go.
Genuinely well-intentioned, such as those who are new to left-wing politics and who don't yet fully understand why there are so many different left-wing ideologies. The slogan of left unity is too often advanced in an attempt to bring revolutionaries under the leadership of reformism. And
that is the point. And you get this from Democrats a lot. You talk about unity. You talk about unity. And that's typically used, like Bernie Sanders' is the bait to go out and get the non-establishment, to go out and get the radical people and bring them back to the Democratic Party. Marianne Williamson was going to attempt to do that this time, but that failed. Possibly Cornel West. We'll see what happens in November, by the time November. But he is more doing it, functionally doing that. Coming in, setting fire to Jill Stein and all that kind of stuff. So he's functionally doing that. But anyway, the point being, a lot of times, especially from the Democratic Party standpoint, this is used to put radical non-establishment sentiment under the leadership of reformists. That's typically this, let's unify the lesser of two evil. That is also part of that, is that it's trying to take those who are more radical under the leadership, the management of reformists. It's to keep that bottled up. So let's continue. But I thought that was one of the more important points here.
An attempt to rally radically different sections of the left behind their chosen representatives of parliamentarism in an unprincipled unity, which historically hasn't worked out so well for revolution.
So unprincipled unity is what we need to start referring to that as. This unity is unprincipled. What good comes from an unprincipled unity? Doesn't funding Ukraine, isn't that an unprincipled unity? Your unity with the Democratic Party, which is unprincipled because you claim to be anti-war, progressive Democrat. So you are aligned within right now in an unprincipled unity, and you say it all the time that what the Democratic Party does and what Joe Biden does, I don't always agree with. Most times I don't. But this is the side I've chose to unite with. So this unprincipled unity has gotten you what? Exactly. Nancy Pelosi and then Hakeem Jeffries that they all voted for. Unprincipled unity. And now this unprincipled unity has morphed into Genocide Joe and a genocide. You see what unprincipled unity gets you? It's not a whole lot of good. Let's continue.
Revolutionaries. But as Lenin points out, the slogan of left unity is a popular one, and therefore revolutionaries must deal with it comprehensively to put to bed any misconceptions of elitism, puritanism, or ivory towers, and outline the true basis for the different forms of unity of revolutionary and progressive forces that exist, rooted firmly in the science of Marxism, rather than bourgeois liberal co-optational approaches. And importantly,
so it is a different perspective, this video, because that's exactly what we deal in. The co-opted version, the bourgeoisie co-opted version of what we're talking about. I can go into some of the examples, but I need to stay here. So
there are different types of left unity, not just the drive for one big tense left-wing organisation, but also single-issue tactical unity, unity in mass organisations of the United Front, and unity within revolutionary parties themselves. As explained by Lenin, what's necessary for the success of the revolution is primarily the unity of Marxists. Marxist unity is based around the unity of revolutionary principles and the formation of a revolutionary party of the new type to lead that struggle.
So this is where consciousness is raised. This is what actually Barbecue in Haiti is trying to do. He's in the process of trying to raise the consciousness of the people of Haiti to get all of these foreign troops, these foreign people who's controlling our country out. So he right now is attempting to raise the consciousness. Now, it wouldn't be necessarily the unity of Marxists, but this is what he's in the process of trying to do right now.
In order to bring about principled unity between the revolutionaries and the broader progressive forces, the Revolutionary Party establishes a united front as the organ of bringing the broad masses into the struggle. Below the unity of the party and the united front, there can also be a tactical unity of broader left-wing forces on single-issue campaigns, such as fighting fascism. So today, we're not going to be discussing.
So, and I can bring the video down. So, such as fighting fascism, I just wanted to end on that point, and I already gave the example of how we're in a predicament right now where supposedly this is the time where we should be able to have a unity, but they're saying fascism Trump and we're saying fascism Biden, and what we feel is fascism Biden has material proof. All you have is rhetoric. He said he's going to Muslim ban. They're banning TikTok right now. So this is where we're in a dilemma here. Let's get into the interview. Solidarity from Scotland. What's up, sir? And I'm assuming it's a sir, Sean. Yeah, I used to do a lot of content on use Marx's Paul when I was doing a lot of content on more theory content I used to do before I got, so last year is when I got into more election sort of politics and dealing where I was the target. It was a strategy. This year, I'm going to be targeting the progressive Democrat facade, and we have to attack the influence of social democrats. That was a strategy. But before 2023, like 2022, I was doing a lot of content, and some of which was I used Marx's Paul. So what's up, Sean from Scotland? All right, so I know. Oh yeah, I'm gonna see where some of you label yourselves. Let me see if I can find if any what you guys were kind of giving yourselves. It was kind of way back. Wow. Okay, so here we go. Marxist Leninist. Let me go ahead and put up the video actually. So now we're going into the actual video, and like I said, we're starting at the unity part of the conversation, and then we'll go back and watch from the beginning. But we're going to be starting at the hour and 12-minute mark. If you're following along on your own video, the hour and 12-minute mark on the Briahna YouTube video on Bad Faith. So let me get back to some of these here. Anti-genocide Democrat, and that's Mo Palm. What's up? existential nihilists. These are interesting. Communist who needs to read more theory. That's an admittance that you need to brush up on it. I'm in that same category. I use probably communists very infrequently because I feel, and it's probably because I'm standing next to Nick, and Nick is so much further along in just reading, and JB too. And I like to get a grasp of things where I feel like it's the back of my hand before I really start just saying it all the time. So I feel your, I don't know if I would call it plain, but I feel your situation. Let's call it that. Any other ones here? Maybe I should be going backwards the other way. Oh, Maoist. This person says Maoist here. I think I put that one up. Any other shout outs? I want to make sure I shout out everybody that did. So, all right. So I think, oh, that's Nick. What's up? CJ quoting Lennon out here. Love to see it. Absolutely, Nick. All right. Good to see some RBN members. I think somebody mentioned Zoya. I haven't seen her tweet yet, but I heard somebody mention Zoya. So Zoya must be in the chat too. So welcome everybody. Oh, there I go. I saw her right here at the bottom here. This is where Zoya. The 7 Muslim majority countries targeted in President Trump's executive order on immigration were initially identified as countries of concern under the Obama administration. You see how we have a fucking base community. We have Zoya. Dana is another one who provides these. It's another. Shoot. Janice is another one. I was trying to remember who it was. Always providing us with that information assist. So thank you all. All right, let me get into this now. Same segment, but let me read these super chats. Brand new member, Orwellian 1984. I love that. I don't know if that's a reference to something. The year is a reference to something in particular. And I mentioned this. I saw this. I showed you this one already. Solidarity from Scotland. And then a Biden 71, always showing us love. All of the platforms, all of the sort of non-establishment platform. I'm trying to say less left. I want to use more radicals. I want to use non-establishment and not more left-right. So I'm going to have to correct myself. But sometimes it is used for a point. And in this case, we will be using it for a point in this discussion. So, but we're talking about left unity, and just a couple of things to mention. I said how the Palestinian issue is really showing the possibilities of what could be accomplished with a sort of broader left coalition. And we're literally seeing it. So there's no need to say, well, what's possible? We're seeing it. The mass protests, those are radicals, those are progressives, those are non-establishments, those are liberals, those are libertarians. So it's a broad coalition. It's a tactical, I forget the full name, but tactical strategy. The tactical strategy, which was a number one in that example. We're seeing the possibilities. You're seeing the worldwide protests. You're seeing a consistent protest. And you're seeing it seems to be energized protests every time there's a protest. It seems that the energy does not seem to be dying down. And you're seeing it based on probably the most dire situation that the left more broadly will be put in. What other situation outside of maybe like the imminent use of a nuclear weapon, maybe? And I might be saying nuclear wrong. Some people keep saying I'm saying it weird. But of a nuclear weapon, I can't imagine anything else. So it is good to see that at least in this situation, now it's a terrible, this is why it takes such a terrible situation to bring us together. But in this situation, we do come together to show support in the ways that we've shown support, even with our criticism, because as some of us in non-establishment radicals feels like the progressives and liberals just finally got here, or got here maybe a couple of months ago. They weren't here October 8th. They weren't here on October 8th. Some people feel that way. So Yeah, but anyway, I've drawn enough. Let's get to some of this the unification part, which doesn't really go that well in an interview. Let's watch.
For the record right now, I would be more than happy to bury the hatchet going forward. I think, and this is what I wanted to ask you about, I'm happy to keep going if you have time, but if not, we can end it here. But going forward, as we're trying to reconstitute the left in 2024 and get behind a candidate in the general election, what are we going to do? Because there are a number of candidates that are fracturing left attention right now. And I don't want this to be a situation where we have a fragmented left that disempowers our ability, especially with Gaza happening, disempowers our ability to put real pressure on the Democratic Party to.
I'm going to rewind it. For me, and this is just a disagreement with Brie. To me, we feel, because I can say we, because I know Nick has said this, we have to get out of feeling like the need for a necessity to have a candidate. People need a candidate that we all need to get around singularly. If we all decided, and we thought we were doing that with Cornel West, or not all of us, but a good majority of us, because some of the progressives weren't coming along, to unite that we like a candidate, and that, you know, so we all go there. I thought Cornel West could have been that candidate. But as long as you're registering your vote outside of the duopoly, so whether it's Claudia or Cornel, I mean, Cornel, if you still like Cornel, some people do, and let's accept that. Even Marianne Williamson, not even Marianne Williamson, she's a Democrat. I'm talking about those outside of the Democratic Party. So I guess RFK right now would be considered outside of the Democratic Party. I haven't heard him say libertarian. To me, libertarian is not outside of the Republican Party. To me, they take court. It's sort of too similar. The party now, there's libertarian values and libertarian ideas that I would agree with, but as far as the party, no. But you get the point being made. So what just getting out of the idea that we have to have a candidate that we all unify around. I don't believe that registering your vote outside of the party is what the Democrats will feel if that's your goal. I don't even think that should be a goal. That would only be a goal if you're still saying I'm coming back. You're trying to, you're hitting this bully and you're going, let's see if it reacts. When you just walk away from the bully and let's not deal with the bully. The Democrats are the bully. And it feels like you're going, hitting them, like with the uncommitted vote, hitting them, you're going, let's see if they react. What's the use in that from our perspective? So let's continue. I'll rewind it back so she can say the question again from the start.
Minimum wage? What is wrong with you? I don't mean you. I mean generically.
Oh, shoot. Did I go back too far? Okay, I did. Right here. All right, so this is from the beginning.
For the record right now, I would be more than happy to bury the hatchet going forward. I think, and this is what I wanted to ask you about, I'm happy to keep going if you have time, but if not, we can end it here. But going forward, as we're trying to reconstitute the left in 2024 and get behind a candidate in the general election, what are we going to do? Because there are a number of candidates that are fracturing left attention right now. And I don't want this to be a situation where we have a fragmented left that disempowers our ability, especially with Gaza happening, disempowers our ability to put real pressure on the Democratic Party to stop a genocide.
Yeah. So, look, definitely is my answer. Now, let me give you the context. So, at TYT, I have platformed literally hundreds of progressives, both candidates and hosts. We've started, half of the hosts that exist now in the progressive ecosystem at some point where
Yeah, you're speaking of the Bernie industrial complex. A lot of the people part of the Bernie industrial complex got their start, or you helped them get their start. The Bernie industrial complex. You are largely the recruiter, the molder, the person who puts on the training camp, or put on, past tense, the training camp for most of the Bernie Sanders industrial complex that's still out there. Or maybe he said have.
TYT and Young Turks. So, and I kept going, and I'm still going to this day. We have dozens of hosts, even though I know for a fact that a whole bunch of them will at some point turn on us and say outrageous and toxic and totally false things about us.
Now he's referring to how people say that they have moved to the right. So he's in, like, I go on my gut, and I go on my lived experience and reading people, and I can see in his face a tell when he's on certain things where it looks like he's pretending and or lying, and or it could be the same thing, like where because he's lying, he's pretending, and he's trying to give interest. He'll go like, yeah, I try so hard, like it's so empty, but he's still going through the motions. And it's a lot of this in this interview, when he's professing so much to be left and radical, and he's still professing to be that. It's such an indication that the critiques of TYT moving to the right has landed on him. It's such a indication of that.
But I still keep going, and I still keep reaching out, and I'm on this show, and I went on, and I had you on our show, and I keep reaching out and reaching out and reaching out, and then every once in a while,
I instigated that, Cenk.
But
I reached out to you.
You're saying, hey, wait a minute. I asked you to be on a podcast, and so your hundreds of progressives that you have platformed and helped and launched into the world don't count because you didn't go on the podcast in exactly the right way that I wanted.
No, it's quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. I think that the reason that I try to stay out of the personal stuff is because I think that what you do is enormously valuable. I think that what Sam Cedar does is enormously valuable. Those are huge platforms with smart people who share my politics 99%, who are advancing my politics. And I would prefer not to say or do anything that diminishes their ability to do good work. Quite the opposite of what you're saying, in fact.
Well, look, last two things that I got to go and do the Young Turks. Look, Briahna, in my opinion, when a friend and an ally is attacked in a vicious and false way, and people can see this on tape, I get their back.
You see how unserious the Bernie industrial complex media arm, you see how unserious they are about really solving issues, really forming a coalition to solve issues. You have to meet their checklists. So you can have a checklist of, okay, the reason we're forming a coalition is because we agree on these things. But then you have a checklist to say, oh, this and this. So where I hear him going is because of a single person, there can't be a unification, reunification, coalition building, whatever you want to use to call it, because of a person. You see how unserious the people who have been in this space for 5+ years are? So they're holding hostage, if we were to believe them, they're holding hostage the unification of all their audiences that can really cause damage to the establishment because they have personal vendettas. The other thing is, we're not playing civility politics here, Cenk. If you're in a coalition for A, B, and C, but you disagree on D, C, and E, we're still going to talk about D, E, and C, of the other letters. I forget the letters, but the other letters. Cenk thinks a coalition means you're going to be quiet on the things you disagree about. How absurd is that? That's what you guys do with the teaming up of the Democrats. You swallow, before this genocide, you swallow your tongue about Palestine. Stop being single issue voters. That's what you said. So is this even serious? And just think about all of the people from AOC to Bernie Sanders. How many people they have following them? They can have protests pop up in minutes. Almost anywhere in the 50 states. They can have people pop up in minutes. Hey, everybody, let's meet over here, downtown Los Angeles. Genocide Joe is showing up. Everybody kind of converge. Why aren't you guys doing that? I'm just saying, if you're really trying to affect change, wouldn't you try to affect change by mobilizing your audience? That's what RBN tries to do. Get involved in mutual aid. Donate to our mutual aid if you can't physically get involved yourself. Get out and get active. We have chapters for people to join to get active in their communities. Why aren't the larger platforms doing that with larger audiences? It's not. That's not my role in this. It's not. So the rich person who has the rich revolutionary who has all the money, it's not your place to fund the fucking revolution, motherfucker. When you got all the money. It's not my. What? Why wouldn't it be your job when you have some of the largest audiences? How do you exclude yourself from a job where you have some of the largest audiences? How do you say by just that's not my role? What? So, but that's what's done.
This whole blogs and things that got me smeared by the mainstream media started when I backed Sam Cedar when the alt-right attacked him on some nonsense joke he did, pretending that he was a groomer, etc. You see me defending progressives all the time when they are attacked, because I've been through it 100 times. When someone doesn't not so attack, and
so he gave an example of the establishment attacking a person, so-called Sam Cedar. That's the example. He compares that example to a podcaster or a person having a person-to-person attack, a personal attack. That's equivalent to him.
And he did it. I forget if he did it to Sirota first or Ryan Grimm first or whoever he did it. I was like, oh my God. And I went and rushed in for help. When you don't come and help, and when you say, I'm indifferent to it, I don't really care what he calls you. I'm going to call it whatever it is. Okay. I'm asking you going forward, can you just pause for us? And not you, just you, but the whole movement. Can we all just pause for a second and go, wait, is it right for one of our own to attack someone in the movement with no basis in fact in a way that is so maniacal that of course they're going to have, like, are we supposed?
So Cenk Uygur doesn't only want Brie on bad faith to push back. Let me put up the graphic. Cenk Uygur wants all of us, when he is attacked, to push back. Is this Donald Trump or is this Cenk Uygur? Who is this? So, do dissidents, you see there in the upper left. Then you see Jimmy Dore. You see Nick and CJ behind him. You see Fiorella. Some other people who I just couldn't fit on the graphic that I would put on that side with us. Of course, Heartlands Media. Of course, the rest of RBN members, Sabby, Rome, JB. Of course, the real Nico House. But he wants all of us on the left of this graphic and the people on the right to come to his defense when he is personally being attacked. On our own streams, we have to go, hold on, guy. You're not going to say, you can talk bad about Genocide Joe, but you're not going to say nothing about Cenk Uygur, okay? That's what he wants us to do. Is this serious? That is so funny. That is so funny. But anyway, let's listen to some more.
Supposed to go, are we supposed to be dogs and go, oh, yes, sir. Of course we are backed by CIA, sir. Of course. But we will work with you nonetheless, sir. I mean, that is the most unbelievable ask. And so I'm asking you to think about it if it was you. I mean, look, I had you on a podcast.
He's saying because he has been criticized as being CIA approved, CIA adjacent because the money he took. He's saying that's a bridge too far. That is a bridge too far. Well, I mean, I would say it's a bridge too far to say that he should be part of a coalition. And I think that was sort of Nick's response in the chat we were talking about. It was like, Cenk Uygur is a fucking imperialist. I think that's what Nick said. But anyway, let's listen. This is hilarious.
Yes, and you caught feelings that I didn't go on your podcast. That is so tiny compared to what we were called.
No, Cenk.
And I don't say this like a
that's not the point.
No, Briahna, I'm not saying it to say ha to you. I'm saying it.
He's saying what happened to me is way bigger than what happens to anybody else. If you bring on Madeleine Albright and treat her like she's some sort of thing that women should look up to, the lady who said it was necessary or she thought it was worth it to kill 500,000 Iraqi kids. What critique are we supposed to say about that? What are we supposed to say? I would have picked somebody else to come on. That's too bad. That's unfortunate. And this is one of the issues why there can't be sort of a broader coalition, because politicians get in the way. Because these other issues, and I was kind of just throw them out right here, Ukraine and NATO. Didn't they just, with the Ukraine war, spun the name NATO left from RBN, spun that name, and that's who they are. They're backers of NATO. So that, of course, prevents a broader coalition. And it's also hindering the NATO part, not the Ukraine part, but the NATO part is hindering, because I see NATO and the United States empire as the same thing. So NATO / the United States empire is involved in the genocide. So, and then you have, John Fetterman is another great example where you had the Vanguard boys, and you see the Vanguard boys to the right of Cenk. The Vanguard boys and some other people on the left, on this right side, you see Crystal and Kyle at the top right. It was Crystal, I think Emma and Sam Cedar, various people pushing John Fetterman. And we were against that. And Nick caught that shit from the beginning. So there's a lot of the police state is another thing. Funding Israel. Like we unite against the stopping the genocide, but that's really where it stops, because you're fine. A lot of the progressives are fine because they vote for it, funding Israel with conditions. Like, what does that do, really? You know what I'm saying? What does that do? You can't use our money once it's in their bank account. Couldn't they just, you know what I mean? Just mix it up, just take their hands and rub the money together. Now we don't know which dollar came from which person. I don't get that. Getting the money stops them. What is putting on conditions do, really? They just say they're doing it.
Because I'm trying to evoke some degree of empathy from you guys. Do you not see that if somebody goes like
he wants us to feel bad for him? He's trying to invoke some sort of empathy from us to feel bad that he was called a CIA operative or whatever he was called, that he's so upset about. Nobody told you to take $20 million from Wall Street. But he wants us to feel his pain and express it.
You sense like 2% of it and you were worried about it. Imagine if you got the whole thing, because some lunatic starts saying that you're secretly being paid by Nancy Pelosi, and then everybody goes, yeah, well, work with that. Briahna, it's your fault. Work with that person. Work with that person. It's your fault. You're starting to split the movement. You'd be like, what are you guys talking about?
Oh, man, does he have friends? Do other humans who aren't in contract with him, do they associate with Cenk? I can't imagine that he's a pleasant person.
That's crazy. Why isn't anybody helping?
Maybe he is. I'm saying I can't imagine it.
Me? Why are they supporting this lunatic instead? But I can't get you to see that. And I don't think I'm ever going to get you to see that.
Well, yeah, and it's not an important point. It's not an important point.
Because
I'm
Cenk,
done with it.
I don't want to go tit for tat. And I can sit here and pull up all the old tweets of the mean-spirited, very personal. I spent most of February in my studio apartment sobbing by myself. I didn't have a network. I didn't have TYT. Ryan Grimm was one of my closest friends and allies in this situation. He gave me my first job. I see him as a mentor, and I felt like I couldn't even talk to him about it because things got so toxic.
Ryan Grimm as a mentor. The same Ryan Grimm that's part of the INSEP, which is likely a intelligence cutout. The same Ryan Grimm who came on her show with Shama Sawant and was so outrageous. Shama Sawant said, "What the actual fuck are you talking about?" Because he was saying such outrageous shit about the railroad strike and the railroaders in the union, because he is a tool of the establishment.
Like I can't appeal to you with my humanity. So I don't want to frankly go back there. It was one of the darkest times of my life, to be honest. I was so fucking depressed.
Is the people surrounding him enabling him when he puts out ridiculous conspiracy theories, like calling me someone who's being funded by NATO because I interviewed Madeleine Albright once.
They get more charged up about these personal attacks than anything else. This is the thing that really animates them the most. It's such a professional managerial class thing to elevate your these personal things above ideology, above tactics, strategy.
So, direct question to both Katie Halper and Briahna Joy Gray. Do you guys think that I'm paid by NATO? And if you don't, why don't you say something? Do you think that Sam?
Because it's none of her fucking business. That's why. So apparently TYT wants everybody to play Captain Save a TYT. Apparently, let me tell you something I'm never going to be. And that is Captain Save a TYT. That's what they want. That's what Cenk said in the interview or was alluding to, and that's what she's saying here too. And let me put this banner up. TYT wants all of us to be Captain Save a TYT. Let's get through some of this here.
Cam Cedar is just a corporate shill? And if you don't think he is, then why don't you say so?
If you do think he is, then you keep quiet. So maybe she thinks he is, and that's why she's keeping quiet.
I just think that this effort has been so destructive, so toxic, and so disgusting. And don't tell me not to focus on Jimmy Dore.
So this was in the context of forced to vote. This is why they didn't participate. Now, for people who don't have health care, do you think if some other person who's fighting on the side of trying to get health care, if another person in the fight say, hey, you're a piece of shit, do you think that person who doesn't have health care will go, you know what? Well, I'm not for the fight for health care. You think that person's going to do that? Or do you think the person with the luxury of health care can go, I'm mad, so now I'm not going to join this fight for health care?
When they've decided to put Jimmy Dore front and center in this entire thing.
Go back and look at what I look like on the videos of January of 2021. I look not great. And so suffice it to say is I could sit here and tell you all of the deeply hurtful comments that people in your orbit have made, but I truly have no interest.
So this is now, remember I said she never explicitly says who is the left that she's talking about when she says, can the left finally unite? It is clear to me because the example, there's clear to me they're talking about forced to vote where this was a fight between progressives, non-Democrat progressives and Democrat progressives. What they view as Jimmy Dore aligned progressives. That's what they would view them as, Anna and Cenk. Jimmy Dore aligned progressives, who he would call fake progressives. He called Briahna a fake progressive too. So that's what we're talking about here. They're not including non-establishment and they're not including radicals when they're talking about this. They're talking about uniting the people who are fighting during forced to vote, which was largely like a progressive fight. Now, that doesn't mean that radicals and non-establishment people weren't part of the Medicare for All movement. That's not what that means.
Interest in asking you to apologize for Nomiki Konst or Anna Kasparian or any of them. I don't care. They are responsible for their actions. You're responsible for yours. And frankly, I'm willing to bury the hatchet on it all. But you seem to have a different requirement of me.
Briahna,
you want me. Let me tell you this, Cenk. I have no interest in throwing Jimmy Dore under the bus or casting aspersions or one way or the other. But I want to make clear, I have talked on the phone with him, I think, once, maybe twice in my entire life. And it was around organizing the Medicare for All rally that was held in January of 2021 in Washington, D.C., talking through logistics of how to put that together. I have had no other relationship with him other than what you see in public on Twitter. I've maybe DM'd him a couple of times. Hey, did you see this clip? What do you go? You know, those kinds of things, including back during the campaign when, frankly, he got really mad at me at some point about something. I can't even remember what.
Of course, he always
But this
gets really
idea
mad at
that
everybody for over everything.
but the idea, but who cares? People have feelings and people get sentiment. Like we're different. I appreciate that. But Cenk, you were just screaming at me at the Hill like a month ago, and I decided to brush it off. I don't care. Like, you called me a bunch of names on the Hill. We'll splice that in too. But I'm just trying to encourage you to maybe have a little bit of a duck water roll off kind of attitude to some of this and stop requiring that everybody kind of fight your battles, or we'd all be mad at each other. Half of my audience wants me to hate David Sirota. I don't want to. I like David Sirota, and I think he is intelligent and valuable.
And I'm gonna go ahead and run a victory lap here, because I absolutely believe that RBN is the reason half her audience wants her to ditch David Sirota. The establishment shield David Sirota. So before RBN, that guy was the pie in the sky. Before RBN. Before one of the more successful working class Black radical channels who actually have influence with activists, influence with people on the ground, influence with people who are most active in politics, who want to be most active in politics. Let's continue.
People in this space, same with Ryan Grimm. And it's okay.
Yeah, and the same thing with Ryan Grimm. And another victory lap for that one. Now, Jimmy Dore, I think they were used to be friends. I can't remember. I don't know how far back it went, but I remember since one of the first times I've seen someone critique Ryan Grimm was on a Jimmy Dore show. I don't know how far back that was, or if there was a time that he was friendly with the Ryan Grimm. And I must say, having this belief that you can be chummy, you can be in community with people who are sellouts to workers like Ryan Grimm, it's really not surprising how the professional managerial class really don't know how to organize with working class people. Working class people are more people who are like, no, we don't want fucking sellouts. Professional management class people are more of, well, as long as they have the accolades, people make mistakes. The accolades, in other words, sort of take precedence over whether or not you're a sellout or not. This is a impediment that the professional managerial class has with organizing and being in community with true working class non-professionals, because they can get along with nurses who go to school. They're working class. They can get along with those people. I'm talking about non-professional working class. They can get along with Starbucks workers. Those are the people who are in college without degrees yet. Same reason. I'm talking about the people who dig ditches. I'm talking about, the people that work at Del Taco, the people that work at, I don't know if that's national, McDonald's, that's national. I'm talking about the people that do some of the most grueling underpaid work that's non-union. Let's continue. Got to get through more of this here.
Okay. They can wish I had a different attitude to them. I can wish they had a different attitude to them, but they can still like me and I can still like them. And that's okay, right? Why can't that be okay?
So A, definitely. B, look, if you think Davis, like, I'm not saying you, obviously, you just said you were good with
Listen
them.
to this.
If you think
Of
David
course.
Sirota, so I will tell people in your audience.
Now, Brie says these two people, my audience believes this about them and I don't, so there's a disagreement, but you can have your belief. Cenk says, no. If you think these two establishment shields and Ryan Graham and David Sirota are bad, this is what he says about us. Listen to this nonsense.
Your audience, so they can get mad at me all over again. If you think David Sirota and Ryan Grimm are not intelligent people that are very, very helpful to the progressive movement, you have no earthly idea what you're talking about.
Well,
Those are the
they don't
two
doubt their
best
intelligence.
reporters that we have. They're the two most honest, smartest, strongest people we have. So
they don't doubt their intelligence, Cenk. What they criticize, because people are allowed to make narrow criticisms of folks that have also positive attributes. What they criticize is to the extent that they, in their reporting, perhaps is too credulous of the incentives of squad members and gives them too much benefit of the doubt, and in effect, constructively, whether or not it's their intent, runs cover.
It is their intent. It's absolutely Ryan Grimm's intent, and that's proved by his book. How can that not be in his intent when you see he comes out with the book about the squad?
Cover for the squad as they do things like, we agree on, fail to use their leverage at any point during that small margin 2021, 2022 term to advance the values and goals of the left. Right?
Okay,
Can't
so,
that
No.
be?
Why would Cenk have any? Why wouldn't Cenk? David Sirota and Ryan Grimm is Cenk Uygur to Cenk. It's the same person. So what he's saying to cover them is he's really talking about himself, because it's the same critique. The same thing that she just described is the critique of Ryan Grimm and David Sirota is the same critique of TYT. So he's not going to land anywhere but where he's landing on this topic, because they're playing the same role and he's hearing it. I don't know if you can hear it. He's hearing it.
That be a thing?
But again, that's super unfair to them, because they did exactly the right thing. They thought it was the wrong tactic to use in the beginning, and then when it came time to use the tactic, they were 100% right, and they did put that pressure on. So
well, look, I talked to Ryan about it. On this show, and he conceded. And people can hear his own words for themselves. I don't mean to mischaracterize him. You can go back and listen to that episode from the summer of 2021. But he conceded some pretty important points about the strategic considerations that were being made at the time and the arguments that he was making at the time, some of which were not accurate. Okay. I'll leave it at that.
If you are...
You mean telling lies again? But that person is supposed to be right alongside us in this community. That is bizarre. That is bizarre. You mean he lied about forced to vote and he knew that was untrue? He lied about what could happen if you forced to vote on a speaker? You mean that? But that's your mentor.
are so hopelessly radicalized that you think Sirota, Grimm, and me are sellouts, then no one will ever be any.
You see how he included himself there? And I hadn't looked this far. You see, it is exactly what I said. He views them this when he's speaking and as talking about this, he's really talking about himself. So his advocacy and the word choice is really to describe his situation. And he just included himself here. If you think we're sellouts, who said that about you? Why are you including yourself, Cenk?
So they don't doubt their intelligence, Cenk. What they criticize, because people are allowed to make narrow criticisms of folks that have also positive attributes. What they criticize is
super unfair to them because they did exactly the right thing. They thought it was the wrong tactic to use in the beginning, and then when it came time to use the tactic, they were 100% right, and they did put that pressure on. So
well, look, I talked to Ryan about it. I talked to Ryan about it on this show, and he conceded. And people can hear his own words for themselves. I don't mean to mischaracterize him. You can go back and listen to that episode from the summer of 2021. But he conceded some pretty important points about the strategic considerations that were being made at the time and the arguments that he was making at the time, some of which were not accurate. Okay. I'll leave it at that.
If you are so hopelessly radicalized that you think Sirota, Grimm, and me are sellouts, then no one will ever be anywhere near pure enough for you. And I don't mean you, Briahna, again. I mean,
but you're just bringing up language that is not really in this, but that's okay.
All right.
That's okay.
So look, in terms of the future,
yeah,
guys, I will work with anyone that has good faith.
Look at all these caveats he has here. That has good faith
and is headed in the right direction.
So where you're going has to be approved by him and good faith. The good faith is so he can exclude Jimmy Dore. That's where that good faith part is. He's putting that in there to exclude Jimmy Dore and is headed in the right direction, meaning you can't be allied with Jimmy Dore. That's the wrong direction. You can't be allied with things that Jimmy Dore is okay with, like being against Ukraine war. That's the wrong direction. You see how, but this is how the professional managerial class thinks coalition building works. You go, if you believe this, get out. If you believe this, get out. If you believe this, get out. That's how they believe coalition building works. Coalition building works the way you see it all over the world right now in protests. Are you against a genocide in Gaza? Yes. Show your ass up. You see the only requirement? Which one gets the most people? The one where we're seeing hundreds of thousands of people protest every single week because it's one requirement, or Cenk's? Completely unserious. The professional managerial class left. The Bernie Sanders industrial complex, their influence should be revoked. You should be watching their shows for entertainment, not at all for information gathering.
And I don't expect anything. I've been through everything in the world. I've had mainstream media, as we said in the beginning, smear me beyond recognition. I've had now some portions of the left smear me beyond recognition. I've had the right wing smear me beyond recognition. When I've asked for people to rally, sometimes they have in beautiful ways, like when we started Just Democrats, and other times they haven't, for personal reasons or non-personal reasons, or because they heard something. That's okay. Bygones be bygones. I don't work with toxic people. Outside of that, everybody's fair game. Briahna, you're not toxic. I get it. We can't get past that one tactical disagreement and all of the massive mountain of feelings that was created by it. But I'm officially right now, if And honestly, you're the only one who ever brings it up. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. So I'm saying, like, I never bring it up in other interviews. Other folks don't bring it up. It's long past history, okay? And I don't
That's
care
why
about
I should have been the face that forced the vote, Cenk.
Well, by the way, wait.
That's why you should have been calling me the face that forced the vote.
No, but if you were the face of it, it would have made a big difference. It would have been
because Jimmy Dore talked about it, and he's more popular, and so him talking about it popularized it more, and him going hard at the strategy. Like, what does that do? Like, that doesn't. You guys chose to pick a person and say he's the face of this because you were unserious about organizing. That's really what happened. So to the broader point, and that's the end of what we're going to be talking. I'm going to rewind this now. Like I said, we covered the last half, but we got to cover some of this nonsense this guy says at the beginning. Ooh, about his campaign, about other just philosophies. We're going to get into this other part of this video that I think I'm going to call Cenk Uygur is the most delusional person on earth. That's what we're going to cover next. But I do have some points and some things written down here I want to kind of touch upon. And that is coalition building possible? Radicals, progressives, social democrats, liberals? Yes, it's possible on single issue coalition. So like Palestine, an example, but a broad coalition is absolutely not. And it's because of all the contradictions that progressives, liberals have, being anti-war, but being part of a coalition of Democrats who are pro-NATO, for example, supporting Democrats in general. The police state is another one. Do I have any content here? Let me just show a couple of things here. 1 second. Before I get to the rest of this interview, I might have one thing I want to show you before I do this pivot point, because it's part of the 1 second here. Is part of the okay, here it goes. Let's listen to this. So let's just bring up some of the oh no, it's on, I'm sorry, my bad, it's on Twitter. So let's bring up some of the differences here between, which is the some of the broad differences, which I would say military, NATO, CIA talking points. I would say these are some of the broader policy differences we have with some factions of the left. So before I get to the rest of that Brie interview, let me just bring this up first. And this will sum it up. This is Nick and I going over something Cenk said, because remember when Cenk said if you're against the Ukraine war, you're an anti-genocide grifter. Remember he's called the people on the left that? Nick and I covered it. So let's watch this video, Me Without a Beard, remember?
Given the size of the massive violation of international law in this case, if they cross the border and actually try to take the country, obviously you freeze all Russian assets all across the world. I don't care who it is, every oligarch, anything related to Putin, seize. Now, again, there'll be some idiots not idiots, to be fair, they're grifters. And I don't know who they're working for, some portion of them, but they'll pretend, people pretending to be on the left, okay? And maybe a couple of people who actually are on the left and are, don't understand world politics at all, who are like, oh my God, freezing the assets of oligarchs. That's so warlike. Him taking Ukraine with 175,000 troops is not warlike, but freezing their assets is? Are you insane? Right? So, and what about the people of Ukraine? Do they count? Are they human beings? As a progressive, do you care about them? Do you care about their freedom? Do you care about their rights? Right? So now once you get beyond freezing the assets, that's when it gets impossible.
Right.
Because what are you gonna do, start a war with Russia?
He's saying that if you're anti-war, you're a grifter. You're a grifter if you're anti-war. So this video is a fucking. This is one of the most insane videos I've seen from Cenk Uygur. Because you see how he was simping for.
So when Cenk calls people grifters for being anti-war, does that fall in the same category as what he says Jimmy Dore did to him? Does that fall in the same category as this is so egregious? Of course, I can't be in be in community with you. How is that not the same thing? But Cenk can do it.
You're a grifter if you're anti-war. So this video is a fucking. This is one of the most insane videos I've seen from Cenk Uygur. Because you see how he was simping for neo-Nazis? He was simping for neo-Nazis. What about Ukrainian people? Oh, you mean the ones that we arm neo-Nazis to hijack the country and overthrow the country like we have done? You mean that country? Yeah, but I literally every single thing he said in that video was wrong. And he was like, "Oh, if we don't let this happen, China will take Taiwan. Taiwan's part of China." This motherfucker is the dumbest person I have ever seen. I cannot believe.
Do you think he's doing it on purpose, or you think he's just not informed? That's what I can't tell from him.
And I can't wait to talk to Caleb about this, but he's 100% a pro-war asset because he was like, remember, he repeating the talking point from the Biden administration. I just shared with you how people are not buying this hysteria. But look at what he leaves the video. He leaves the video with if Russia invades. If Russia, he's repeating Anthony Blinken, State Department talking point.
Yeah, yeah, it's a bit shocking. The beard. I look a lot younger without the beard.
Given the size of the massive violation of international.
Okay, so all right, so you see some of the differences why we can't have a broader coalition, because progressive and social democracy is really just anti-war when it comes to past wars, not anything that's current. They're never for against a current sort of war. I thought it would also be funny for me to play some of the old sort of Cenk videos with Briahna Joy in previous interviews.
Guys,
Here's one.
Do I look like I don't want to force votes? Of course I do.
One of the moments that I remember of TYT being characterized as no longer capturing the spirit of the Justice Democrats or what the Justice Democrats were supposed to do was the moment around force the vote. And at that time, despite there being a poll that TYT put out of its audience, where a majority of the TYT audience seemed to support force the vote, the newscasters, the personalities on the show, were very much against it. And as I'm sure you can remember, that caused a significant rift. The issue was not whether or not Nancy Pelosi would necessarily become speaker. Cenk,
Sure
with all
we
due
are.
respect, your
Fantasy
characterization of what happened, I think, is reflective of the lack of grace and communication that was happening among the left at the time. And I think if people had been less motivated by their personal animosities against each other, it seemed that Jimmy Dore, you've expressed some animosity toward him several times during our short conversation here. I do think if those personal animosities weren't at play, maybe we could have been in a world where you were listening to myself, Crystal Ball, Kyle Kulinski, Cornel West, Chris Hedges, who were also advocating for this and who were being very clear that there were any number of demands. I wrote an article in Current Affairs that set all of this out contemporaneously. So you can go back and look. That it wasn't this idea that we were going to hold the vote and magically get Medicare for all. Cenk, you're talking about personalities. I'm talking about issues. All I know is that David Sirota supported Force the Vote. I had him on my podcast talking about it many times.
That's not true.
Yes, he did.
No,
and he
didn't.
continues to be an advocate that I value and respect a great deal. And he is able, as a mature person, to tease away his personal feelings about human beings that he might share an idea with or a strategy with, and the underlying strategy. And I really do hope that we see more of that on the left and less of a focus on who it is that's delivering a certain kind of a message. Thank you so much for joining us today and talking through some of these tough issues.
You got knocked the fuck
out. All right, I thought that was a good one.
Do I look like I don't want to force votes?
Again, this is from
Of course I do.
Turncoat Dawn. Makes these great videos. And there's another one. Is this the same one? 1716. Okay, so let's watch this first one here. This one first, I mean. Here's another one. Another different conversation they had.
Just to be really clear, because I didn't insert myself into an argument that you
No,
and
you
Jimmy
did.
were
You
having.
kept backing him over and over again.
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I keep backing force the vote. I believe in force the vote. And I'm going to continue to back that kind of adversarial politics until the day I die, whether Jimmy supports it, whether someone else supports it that you might not like, whether someone I respect deeply like Cornel West supports it, and Chris Hedges supports it, and Crystal Ball supports it. All of these people were supporting this idea. And what was frustrating to me was how unable people were to engage with it on its substance, in part because they were so caught up in the ad hominems with Jimmy. So again, I can't speak to any of the stuff that you just talked about. I don't know who's funded by who. That's none of my business. I choose to judge people about the content of their opinions on the policies that I care about. So with respect to force the vote, I was frustrated with some of the backlash against David Sirota. I was also frustrated with David Sirota coming out of the gate a little timid on the issue, but I reached out to David Sirota. I talked to David Sirota on my show and his, and we worked it through, and I addressed all of the concerns he had about force the vote. And he ended up being one of the best advocates for force the vote and engaging, because we engaged and we were able to add to the idea and say, you know what, the part about the Medicare for all is a largely performative vote to get the issue discussed in the context of this pandemic. But what concrete asks could we make? And David Sirota was instrumental in coming up with some of those asks, like getting Richie Neal off of the head of the Ways and Means Committee, like getting the PAYGO exemptions, which although there's a lot of discussion about how the squad did get those, that wasn't in fact the case. And he enriched the idea because he was able to participate in the conversation.
Yeah, that was very informative. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the actual.
Just to be really clear,
let me pause this
because I didn't insert myself.
Replays automatically. All right, so and we already watched the, so we don't need to watch these videos. So we already watched that. So let's go back to the main video, and now we're gonna watch it from the beginning, and where now they're talking about a different topic. They first begin the conversation, at least the YouTube version. They first began the conversation about his campaign, and of course he tells a bunch of just bogus stories about it, but she indulges him for the sake of the interview, I would assume. But let's listen to some of this here.
And now you're taking offense at the slightest thing I said because I disagree with your tactic. You have to deal with objective reality.
All right, Cenk.
When you start out as an outsider like me, you start out with a giant obstacle to
Make stuff up.
This is the most irrelevant debate of all time.
Well, I would love to move on. No, you made him the face of the movement.
No, I
look.
Briahna,
you guys.
So I'm the driving force behind challenge the establishment. Okay.
Oh my goodness gracious.
He starts joking around about looking up my co-host's shirt and how cool it was and how funny it was.
They would have all started saying, "Wow, look at her thinking she can do this. What an arrogant person."
Of course, James, but we all know that, right?
Please, all of us, to the best of your abilities, let's get beyond it. Let's go back to unifying, and let's try to do something productive.
That's right.
Would have been taking so.
Okay, so let's now get to the questioning here. I want to start it here.
Their vote going forward from this place. But let's start with your own campaign. Obviously, I think the kind of top end news item that people were focusing on was your eligibility having not been born in the United States of America. Do you think that subsumed too much of the coverage and kind of undermined an ability to run a sort of a message campaign?
100%, but there's also a giant irony in it, which is.
What do you mean? The fact that you cannot run as president or you can't be elected as president because you're not naturally born here. The fact that that's the case and that's why people didn't buy into your campaign, that hindered it. Why would that hinder it? Of course.
Is that it kind of subsumed the campaign to the point where we had much more trouble raising money, getting in the media, all the things that we needed to run a real campaign, right? But at the same time, we didn't get any credit for doing something interesting and pursuing a civil rights matter. So we didn't get any like coverage from it either. So it wound up being a worst of all worlds. Because I think that if I was in a slightly different situation, let's say that I was Jennifer Granholm, so someone who was a secretary of cabinet and very respected, born in Canada, etc., and I decided to run for president, my guess is that hey, first naturalized citizen to run for president would have, if it was someone that had status, privileged position, would have been taking so much more seriously. Like it would have been considered like, wow, that's a beautiful, great, amazing thing that this person is doing. Whereas I got, yeah, he's not eligible, so we hate him twice as much. / will completely ignore him, and so it just became impossible to recover from that. And many other things happened in the campaign, and I think a lot of positive things happened. But in terms of ability to succeed on some of the core issues, that really hurt us beyond our ability to recover.
Yeah, I mean, that feels right. And I understand why that's frustrating. I completely agree with you that the kind of civil rights case that you were making is an important one. I think many people who've listened to this podcast have hopped to the comments on Patreon or elsewhere and said after a Shama Sawant interview, for instance, oh gosh, I wish she could be president. And there are a lot of folks over the years, Arnold Schwarzenegger on the right, people were desperate for him to be able to run for president, who for various reasons, sparked the imagination, compelled people to start to try to investigate whether or not this was possible. But I think you're right. When you're already running kind of an insurgent outsider campaign, something like eligibility requirement is going to potentially have the effect of derailing the effort entirely and preventing people from looking to you with the amount of seriousness that's required to get off the ground in the first place. Which I would say is not just an issue with your campaign. It does seem to be something that's causing a lot of these left efforts to flag. And I think pivot to what's going on with the Cornel West campaign, where it does feel like the pivots between launching with the Movement for a People's Party, then going to the Green Party, and then going independent, I think caused some folks who were pretty ready to get on board to have some hesitation about whether or not they wanted to throw their own money behind that project. What's your read?
Yeah, so it's a good overlap between the naturalized citizen issue and the left overall and our chances. So the second thing I would have said about the naturalized citizen issue is that if I was running on the Republican side, then I think that I could have been a Democratic hero, ironically. Like if you run as a Democrat, they hate you. But if I ran as a Republican challenging Trump and saying the same exact things that I was saying about Trump, but I was on the Republican side and pursuing a civil rights case exactly as I was, I think mainstream media would have looked very kindly on it.
So I'm hoping that Brie doesn't buy into this, that he is trying to scapegoat everything but himself, why people didn't support his campaign, that it was some what he's explaining here, which is absurd, and she's just, in my opinion, indulging him. I would hope she does not buy this garbage about his campaign, and he's going to do this for a while, but in different areas that I want to comment on. That's the only reason we're even listening to this part.
That would have been like, whoa, okay, and then a lot of civil rights groups would have probably rallied to my cause. But what you don't see, and hence now the overlap in the two subjects, is how much power the Democratic Party has and how censorious they are and how punitive they are. So that's behind the scenes, and only a few people like myself, Marianne Williamson, Cornel West, et cetera, have seen it. And so, for example, I would book events ranging from small things like a speech event.
So Cenk is about to tell us how with a straight face that the Democratic establishment was afraid of him, that his campaign didn't take off because of the Democratic establishment, not because of the fact that nobody likes him. Again, he's just trying to pretend this is a fantasy world. This is why I say this is the most delusional person in politics, if not the earth, this guy Cenk.
Bennington College of Vermont or Texas Tech, because I was on the ballot in Vermont and Texas, and they would get canceled a couple of days before the event. And it happened in every instance, in every situation that you could imagine. So I got booked on CNN, canceled. Booked on Jesse Waters' Fox News channel, canceled. Vermont Progressive Caucus, canceled. Arab American Museum in Dearborn, Michigan, canceled. And so if you're wondering, why are these...
That's interesting. And they're going to talk about it more when they get to the uncommitted part. That the people, the Arab Americans in Dearborn canceled.
He's all getting canceled. That's because you've never run against a Democratic incumbent. And they have tremendous power behind the scenes, because it's not just that they call the Arab American Museum or Bennington College and say, drop them. It's not Joe Biden on the phone. Of course not, right? But it is a group think that anyone running against Biden is a heretic of the most extreme variety and must be punished and must never get a vote. The most important thing is do not let them out of the box, okay? And I think that Marianne suffered this more than
the body language from Brie, that she's not buying a single word of this as far as being the reason his campaign did not take off. I don't get that at all from her. I'm going to fast forward just a little bit.
And you can't support Dean Phillips, otherwise you're betraying the Democratic Party. And I mean, you can go back and read the articles pre and post, and you will see an enormous difference. And we saw that day to day.
So I think there's something to that, but I'm really interested in getting back to the core of this, just what seems to be a strategic consideration around uncommitted, which is whether or not they should have pivoted to a person. Because this is, of course, is something that I think has crossed a lot of our minds. When we see the numbers that uncommitted is able to put up, compared to the numbers that other left candidates have been able to put up, or people who are not participating in the primary yet, obviously Cornel West. But
so they're getting to the point of, if we can galvanize and get 100,000 plus in a single state, why can't that 100,000 plus vote for a candidate on the left? That's a possibly a potentially good question. Let's see where she goes with it.
I think many of us wonder why is it that uncommitted can get 100,000 votes in Michigan, or get 30% of the vote in Hawaii, get into the teens in North Carolina, when these left candidates have struggled so mightily? And was there any effort to try to link up, assuming that you're a candidate who's ideologically aligned on Palestine, which maybe you were? Marianne has had her criticisms with respect to her stance on Gaza, although of course she does support a ceasefire. I don't know what the limits of the uncommitted sort of argument are, but was there any effort between you, or to your knowledge, Marianne, or any other campaign, to try to say, well, we should just rally behind a person as opposed to a word?
Yeah, 100%. I did.
Because I don't know if he says, let me see if he give him a chance to say it in the interview. I think he may say it in this interview.
I called all the Muslim leaders I could think of and reached out to them, and they had a lot of positive words. Keep going, brother. We love you, brother. You're doing really important work, brother. And campaign. No. So
what did they say to you? Like, what is it?
So he reached out to uncommitted and they said no, as far as backing him versus uncommitted on the ballot. That's what I'm reading from what he's saying. And she's saying, well, what was the reason why they said they wouldn't? Listen to this nonsense that he goes into.
Is it to say, well, as every candidate does, there's some baggage that we don't want to be, connected with, or is there a policy point that we don't want to entangle ourselves with? What was it?
Yeah, so it's a combination of factors. So, number one, when you run as an outsider, again, me, Mary.
So this is the long version, most of which he doesn't need to say. When a person starts out like this to answer a question, this is them trying to gain sympathy and get you on their side. This entire interview, Cenk paints himself as the victim. This entire interview, Cenk paints himself as the one that's getting all the establishment fired because he's the real person against Joe Biden. It is complete nonsense, but this is how he's painting himself. And I don't believe Brie buys it. You can kind of see it in some of her facial expressions a couple of times.
Marianne, and even of all people, Dean Phillips, the minute he started criticizing Joe Biden, you become persona non grata in a way that goes way beyond the establishment. It actually seeps into even your own allies and the progressive movement. Why? Because mainstream media smears you.
So he's trying to say the propaganda or the smears are so crazy and so over the top, it seeps into the psyche and the mind of people who would be supporting him. And that's why he didn't do good. And then he says, and it's so this thinking seeped into why these Arab and Muslim groups didn't support me. That's where he's going with this.
You so thoroughly that people don't know it's not true and they can't get it out of their heads. So, for example, one of the concerns that the Muslim community had, and these are all small, they're not determinative, it's a collection of things, okay, was, hey, is Cenk sufficiently pro-Muslim? And
is Cenk sufficiently pro-Muslim? So this is the pushback he got. Wait a minute, Cenk. Are you sufficiently pro-Muslim? We watch your freaking content on TYT, bro. He's not. Listen to what he says. Like he's like, what? This is such a ridiculous question. That is a spot-on question.
And you would think like, well, that's the most insane question I've ever heard.
It is not.
I'm born Muslim. My whole family's Muslim.
None of that has to do with your
no one
advocacy
defends Muslim Americans or Muslims across the world in American media, arguably more than me. Or if they do, it's a tie, right? So why would they even question that? Because they read from the New York Times the last time I ran for Congress that I was anti-Muslim. The New York Times just
that you were. That's why. So they read back in the day that you were anti-Muslim, and that's why they didn't support you, Cenk. And that's why they're questioning whether you're sufficiently pro-Muslim. How about your current content on Israel? How about your content October 8th? When you weren't so pro-Arab, when you weren't so pro-Muslim, when you weren't so pro-Palestinian. They watch your content.
just stated it as it was a fact and never clarified that I am actually born Muslim.
Why would they write that?
They wrote it because
now I'm adding to this the look that Brie had in her eye when she said that. One, it was a gleeful smile in her eyes when she said, "Why would they write that?" So maybe she's gained a little satisfaction out of this, but now there's no evidence. Just me. I saw a gleam in her eye that was just twisting a knife. Why would they write that? She knows why they would write that. I'm gonna rewind it. You tell me if you see it. I could be seeing things. Let's see. We're at 406. So let's go back here. 20 seconds.
Why would they even question that? Because they read from the New York Times the last time I ran for Congress that I was anti-Muslim. The New York Times just stated it as it was a fact and never clarified that I am actually born Muslim.
Why would they write that?
They wrote it because once an outsider runs, a smear factory begins. So that particular smear came from.
But of all the ways to smear you, I would expect. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to awfulize here, but I would expect the usual slight that Muslims get is that they are anti-Semitic, for instance. It's something that a lot of us who've been defending Palestine on the left have been hit with. It seems bizarre to go out of your way to accuse a Muslim person of being, I don't know. I have been
of being anti-Muslim. It doesn't make sense because that's not what happened. The Muslim community and the Arab community watches his content, knows this guy, and knows that he's not an ally. He's the one that's trying to put off that assessment by this community off on some New York Times article and not his advocacy. Astonishing. Let's get through this. I'll let it play.
I've been accused of being anti-Black. So I don't know why I'm actually surprised.
So, Briahna, I can explain all that because I lived it.
Sure.
And so, at the time, if you remember, I'm running in 2020, and Bernie endorses me.
I don't need this.
One of the things that they did, Briahna, speaking of anti-Semitic, of being anti-Muslim and anti-Semitic. Okay,
he's long-winded, but she's going to bring it back. Don't worry. I'm just going to move it to the part where she brings it back.
So I have the article in front of me, and you're right. It's by Jennifer Medina, and she opens it. Can an endorsement be put back into the bottle? On Thursday, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont endorsed Cenk Uygur, a progressive talk show host running for a California congressional seat. That, by the way, how sure are you? Because this feels pretty untested. What information do you have about whether or not you actually were able to get those delegates and delegate them, as it were, at a convention?
Yeah. So if Joe Biden is the candidate and he never withdraws, and I was absolutely clear with all my supporters about this, then those delegates are worthless. He is going to have 98% of the delegates. The 2% aren't going to matter at all. But if Joe Biden withdraws from the primaries, as our client suggested in that podcast, and I think there's some percentage chance that he's going to do that, then the delegates become worth their weight in gold, because presumably the Newsoms and the Pritzkers and the Whitmers have to try to get as many delegates as possible, and they're competing with each other. Then you have that as a batch of delegates that is leverage that could be used to try to extract some sort of significant promise from them, like any of the Bobbian guys. So that was the idea, and there's very good logic behind it. There's no question about that. So, and then but lastly, and most importantly, out of all those factors, is that if the Democratic Party will end your career if you say mean things about their candidates, their incumbents, the people that are already in power, or even if you support someone who says negative things about their candidate or their incumbent, then
why is TYT still up and running and doing okay? Because you do that sometimes mildly. Because he always tries to make himself as the person who's so non-establishment, and they're going to be coming after him. Why aren't they? Why isn't that happening to you? All right, so let's go to the next point here. This is my next marking point.
Is in jeopardy.
Right, but just to be clear, Cenk, I wasn't asking, regardless of her relationship with you, what I'm asking about is whether or not she would be interested in running with Committed, And so I'm more curious about whether Committed reached out and was interested in that kind of a project rather than, because as you said, we can't mind read about your guys' relationship.
Rashida running for president?
Yes.
Yeah, my guess is that she would have thought it was too unrealistic and that could hurt her reputation.
So it was long-winded, but I'm not going to play the long-winded part, but the delegates and uncommitted, nothing's going to happen with those delegates. Because the delegates are uncommitted, they kind of just fall by the wayside or go to the person who actually won the primary. There's not a person. So the argument was, if instead of going uncommitted, put that same vote against a person, so that person who now has control of the delegates, because it's a single person, uncommitted is not a person. If it was, candidate A will be able to go to convention and say, these are my delegates. I need to extract said thing from you. So that's the context of what they're talking about here is should we have gotten behind a candidate instead of uncommitted? What if that was the whole point? Again, the uncommitted campaign is put on by Democrats who want Joe Biden to win. The Andy Levins, the Rashida Tlaibs, they want Joe Biden to win in November. So why would you guys are saying, why didn't they strategize a certain way? It's because they don't want uncommitted to become abandoned Biden in November. Those are two different campaigns. So to me, this was strategically on purpose to go the uncommitted route.
Which is a shame. And I would love to get her on the show, Rashida, if you're listening to this. We'd love to talk to you about it, because I know for a fact that the kind of support that other progressives have been struggling to recapture post Bernie, because of the disappointment with Bernie and people's unwillingness to open their wallets back up, I think you would be pleasantly surprised by the grassroots campaign that's eager to materialize at your feet if you ever show any interest there. But
Briahna, let me just say one quick thing about that.
Sure.
So you're absolutely right. There would be a groundswell for her that she does not anticipate. And that is why I tried so hard to get other progressives.
So they're talking about, because the question, he didn't really answer the question. He went a roundabout way, and then she finally had to ask him like third time, and then he finally said, "Oh yeah, she could have ran." So they're saying, instead of, because you're saying, well, who could have been the person that they put their delegates to? And they're saying, why couldn't it have been Rashida Tlaib? She could have been the one that they wrote in, so that she's the person who has the delegates. She's representing the same community. So it would have been, logically, that would have been the person, I guess, if you did go that way. But of course you did not, because they want uncommitted votes to not materialize into anything else, not even delegates that can be leveraged against the president, because this is really about just blowing off steam. At least that was the target. Now, the people, the rank and file who actually vote, if they decide to do something beyond what the organizers of uncommitted wants, that's different.
In this race, before it seemed that almost no one would get in, and hence I got in to try to push Biden out. But you're right, because I know, like, when you start out as an outsider like me, you start out with a giant obstacle to overcome. And so
Always
Rashida would not have had as large an obstacle. But in order to be fair to Rashida, you have to understand that she would have run into that third rail too, and they would have smeared the hell out of her. It wouldn't have just been as bad as it is today. They would have all started saying, "Wow, look at her, thinking she can do this. What an arrogant person."
Of course, Cenk, but we all know that, right? And so this is a little bit of a difference that you and I have had for some time over some of these political issues. I think the left has to accept that obviously it's going to get smeared, no matter what it does. And therefore, I think that should frankly not be a part of the calculation, unless the left just wants to sit on its hands and be like, we're going to just exist and do it and live with whatever the neoliberals want. We can both shut down our shows and stop talking about it all, because if we're going to say we're going to freak out if there's any resistance to us, well, then we might as well not try. There's going to be resistance. And this was, I really don't want to go down this road. This was a little bit of the argument that was being made by some folks around force to vote, that the squad is going to be smeared. And I think some of us were saying, yes, obviously, and it's going to be on us to do what we can with independent media to protect them and rally around them and to push back. But this is a kind of a once in a generational moment where they have real leverage. Will they use it? And now similarly with Rashida Tlaib, it's like, okay, is this uncommitted campaign demonstrating is the horrific nature of what everyone's seeing on their phones in Gaza enough to galvanize a real grassroots campaign around a candidate like Rashida Tlaib? And yes, the likelihood of her winning, almost nothing. But we seem to see already that the uncommitted campaign has pressured Biden to, at very least, do a rhetorical shift and start saying he's in support of a ceasefire. It's obviously nothing, and it's rhetorical, and it's not enough, and it's bullshit. But it's a demonstration that they're listening and that there's leverage to be had. We see this weird rigmarole over this port that they're building off the coast of Gaza. Again, it's bullshit and it's nothing, but it's clear evidence that the Biden campaign is trying to come up with busy work to make it look like they're
right. They're trying to come up. They're hearing us enough to say, I can create ideas and talking points to fool you that I'm doing something. They're not hearing us to actually change policy. They're not going to change policy. They're just coming up with different messaging techniques. And this port is one of it. I reported on this 2 days ago. The port was actually Netanyahu's idea. He brought up this idea back in October. It was reported on in Jerusalem Post that I read the article.
Like they're responsive to the significant slice of the electorate that is saying, we won't vote for you as long as you're the henchman to a genocide. So I did want to ask you this argument about. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. You can respond.
Yeah, you're bringing up something really important, Briahna, and I need to be clear. No, we don't.
Jesus Christ, just get to. And he does this a couple of times. She tries to get to the next thing. Here we go. Let's see.
Did Justice Democrats together, and Kyle has come on the show and made this exact case as to why he wanted the squad members to stick their neck out and be willing to fail, saying exactly what you've just said, that the whole point of getting them elected in the first place was to have some folks in there that were willing to take a dive on principle. And AOC, of course, who has been quoted a million times as saying, I'd rather be a one-term congressman than to not live up to my principles. I'm paraphrasing, but we all know the quote. Maybe we can splice it in again.
What the Bronx and Queens needs is Medicare for all. We can do it now. It takes political courage. Start bringing the ruckus on the Democratic Party. That is our job. It's great that everyone thinks these issues are important. We need to make them urgent. This country has only ever changed for the better by groups of people that were willing to put everything on the line for a better future. That's how we got the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement. That's how we got the labor movement, queer rights and marriage equality. It didn't happen by people playing it safe. We have to give it all we got. Don't people realize that the most powerful position you can be in is when you are not materially attached to a position of power? If you're a one-term Congress member, so what? You can make 10 years worth of change in one term if you're not afraid.
The Democratic Party does not do more unless it is pushed. So we need to push them. And they don't like it. I think I annoy them, but but that is our job. That's our job.
So that is what is so frustrating, I think. Not that there's a failure to acknowledge the risks that they face, but as I'm sure you understand, the people who listen to this show and other shows like yours and who were sending $7 checks or $27 checks to the Bernie Sanders campaign, many of them did not have that much money to spare, but were willing to do it because they said, here's a fighter who's willing to sacrifice it all for me. I'll sacrifice it for him. He's going to sacrifice it for me. Yeah. And so then when you have people who can barely make rent sending you checks, boosting your campaign, knocking doors for you, and you're sitting there unwilling to let go of $175,000 a year salary, when you also have 1,000,001 opportunities that frankly are better paid if you were to leave Congress at this point, if you're an AOC or member of the squad, when you're able to access book deals, or you could sit as a co-host of The View, or you could join the Center of American Progress or whatever venal opportunities Democrats offer you once you leave Congress. The argument that, oh my gosh, I could lose my seat, it starts to fall on deaf ears. Yeah, go ahead.
Briahna, I'm just telling you the reality. I totally agree with you. I think that it's unacceptable that they're not. I think that they've actually done things worse than what you're saying. So let me explain the difference in the tactics where we had. I don't want, without fully getting into it, just real quickly. I thought that putting all of our leverage in the speaker vote was so premature, and that it was not the right tactic. But when it came to later things where their vote mattered the most on Build Back Better, and especially on the Inflation Reduction Act, where they had enough of a voting block that they could have made all the difference. And that is when they should have built up their power and leverage and used it. And I was tearing my hair out on Young Turks. You've got to use your power. This, like, if you had it in my.
So force the vote on lobbyist written legislation, but don't force the vote on the speaker. You see what force the vote did for the Freedom Caucus, for the MAGA caucus, whatever you want to call Matt Gaetz and all of them. You know what they extracted? Any member can call for the removal of the speaker. That's what keeps the speaker in line for the people and the policies you want. He's saying, no, that wasn't, and it's not even with any substance to say why that's not. It's just, wasn't the right time, not a good idea. That's it.
In my opinion, they had a perfectly good reason not to do the speaker thing. It was too big of an ask for too little in return. But if
too big of an ask for too little return, you can't say that anymore when we have proof from the Freedom Caucus and what they extracted.
But if you don't use it when when the whole enchilada is on the line, okay, that just means you didn't have the courage to use it, and you're never going to use it, and then this whole enterprise was a mistake. And so, and now not only did they not use it then when it was critical, but since then, other than Rashida fighting valiantly on Gaza, and to be fair, the rest of the squad supporting her on Gaza. So I appreciate them for that. I appreciate them for a couple of other things.
To varying degrees. I mean, I do wonder what you make of AOC not sitting with them and wearing a keffiyeh and holding those signs up at the State of the Union.
Yeah, but to some degree.
It's irrelevant, because what they did was largely irrelevant too.
Etc. But what I was getting to, Briahna, is, but overall, no, I've kind of given up on them. And so.
But Cenk, so
it's funny how these establishment characters sound a lot like us. It's almost like they watch us and know what to say because that's what the audience wants to hear. It's almost the people who are so nakedly employing that sort of strategy of just listening to radicals and then regurgitating it without any substance behind it is Cenk, Marianne Williamson. There's another person. Anyway, when I think of that person, but these are people right now. Maybe Cornel West could fall into that category too.
So I hear you, right? Like, and everything in hindsight is 20/20. But let's play this out a little bit, because obviously we're years later. We've seen the Republicans do this exercise this identical plan and do it over the speaker vote, and to do it multiple times, right? The second time actually ousting the speaker. The argument that it's about what the ask was, it feels a little frustrating, I think, to some of us, because me personally, I love the idea of Medicare for all being part of the ask. And I certainly am not going to deny that I'm very committed and was very committed to Medicare for all being part of the ask, precisely because we were in the middle of a global pandemic. There was no vaccine out. People were dying. People were terrified. 15 million people had just lost their health insurance, right? And it felt like a prime moment to be foregrounding Medicare for all at a time where Bernie had just lost.
But Cenk is saying that was the absolute worst time to demand a vote on Medicare for all during a pandemic where people are dying. That's not the time. But some lobbyist written Build Back Better bill, that was the pivotal moment, as he describes it. This is completely an unserious point of view. Not just, I have a different, no, this is an unserious point of view.
And it kind of felt like we weren't going to be able to have this conversation again, perhaps for a generation. And that feels kind of like where we are right now, because certainly nobody's talking about it.
No, so Briahna, but you're flipping it.
Wait, let me just finish this. Let me finish this,
yeah.
Cenk. So I will admit, I'm not trying to run away from my desire for Medicare for all to be part of the ask. But at no point, and I can't speak for anybody but myself, But at no point was, to me, the ask limited in those ways. So I'm not a Hill expert. I don't know exactly what's in the province of what Nancy Pelosi can provide in her capacity as a speaker versus the kind of thing that will require broader congressional buy-in. But I do look to others like David Sirota for advice. And when I was writing the piece for Current Affairs, making the case for force the vote, and David Sirota reached out to me, we were kind of talking about it because he was a little bit on the other side of the issue, but we talked about it. And he was writing a competing article at the time for, I forget, The Nation maybe. And I said, well, let me just link to yours because I think all of your asks, his argument was that the asks were too small or wrong. I said, I love your ask. I'm going to link to your article and incorporate them into mine because I think we should ask for the moon and the stars because they have real leverage here. Let's talk about it. I don't care what it is, but something should be demanded, right? Because I hear your point that save your political capital for later, but it's not as though they're going to oust them between January force the vote and March or whenever it was that they first voted on the American Rescue Plan, right? There was no risk at them not being able to have another bite of the apple. And if anything, you can make the argument.
Right. Meaning she's saying forcing the vote does not prevent you from doing what you're saying, Cenk. They could have forced the vote and did the other stuff too. This is a point that they're never going to concede because it's admitting that they were in the wrong. So they're never going to concede this point, even though it is one of the weaker points that they made. So let's move here. Let's move on.
Yes,
it was literally called that, and you could watch me bringing Ro Khanna on and ripping into him on the air.
But Ro, you didn't. But you got it. Look, let's just do one thing at a time. You guys said that you would not vote in the House until the Senate passed Build Back Better. You're now saying no, we withdraw our position. You have to say that's true because it is true, right?
Well, there was a disagreement. There were different opinions, but certainly our chair, Arella J. Paul, said initially, I don't know how she framed it, that we want some ironclad.
I can read a New York Times quote for you. Progressive Democrats warned the House leadership that a majority of their members will withhold their support for a $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill until the Senate passes a second, far larger package containing their spending priorities.
So Cenk's point here is that this was the pivotal point that they should have stood their ground and held their vote. If they held their vote at the speakership, they could have made certain demands of legislation. That could have been part of the ask. Just like with the Freedom Caucus. But let's let him finish making. Let's let him finish making his point.
Priorities. That's a fact. So
yeah, but the challenge is if we really were to hold to that, we'd have nothing. I mean, you really would then the president's agenda would not happen, and we'd move on to the next issue.
But hold on, Representative Khanna, that's of course not true, right? So you wouldn't have it yet. Hold on, you wouldn't have it yet, and then what would happen next is pressure would then go back to Manchin and Sinema, and they would say, well, the progressives are holding the line, and they're doing the same exact thing that Manchin and Sinema are doing. Manchin and Sinema are drawing red lines all over you guys.
And Ro, I give him a lot of credit because he's the only one that actually withstands that and comes back and is honest about it.
Yeah, but he's going to be on this week.
Yeah, but I said, Ro, what are you guys doing? If you don't act,
this is a thing to them. This is such not a thing. But meanwhile, what you have done, Cenk, is you've given the power to Nancy Pelosi, though, by not forcing a vote, not putting any sort of guardrails like they like to use on Nancy Pelosi. So she is free to do a lot of bad because you didn't force the vote. And yeah, you may have some of these instances where, in your opinion, you want them to force the vote. But if you had forced a vote on the speaker, you could have had many more asks that even helped craft legislation. So the point is just, it's like after you give away your leverage, that's when it's time to fight the hardest. That's the point that he's trying to make here. That's the time when you, oh, okay. So I'm a little tired of this forced to vote. I'm waiting to get to this here. Okay, so right around here, they're winding down on this forced to vote crap.
Had more of this kind of a conversation, civil and respectful and reasonable, and come to understand each other's positions a lot easier if we had just been willing to reach out to each other and talk before slinging around ad hominems. And I blame Jimmy as well for slinging around ad hominems.
No, it's not as well. That's
so let me just say this. The working class is not against using ad hominems. The working class, that's very much a part of the working class vernacular. So this sort of, because this is about civility politics. We are not a part of that. We're not a part of that. Because if you support NATO, we're going to call you a NATO-loving leftist. That's what we're going to call you. We're going to call you a NATO supporter. And if you are a supporter of the establishment in many different categories, then I might call you Fred Flintstone, like I call Cenk Uygur. So this sort of rules of engagement of no ad hominem attacks, that is not at all what the working class point of view is whatsoever.
Well, that's what drives me crazy. So, Briahna, can you promise me in return that the next time an ally of yours is smeared as thoroughly by a deranged lunatic as we were, and almost everyone else that disagreed, had an honest disagreement about tactics? He also said Amy Goodman might be working for the CIA. So when you have a deranged lunatic,
when she has the one of the endowments that sponsors the freaking Democracy Now, you want people to overlook stuff, and they're not going to do that. This is when we're talking about these unprincipled unity is what he's talking about. No, we're not down with unprincipled unity.
on your side, maybe you realize, hey, this guy's smearing everyone and turning allies into enemies.
I don't want to do this.
Hold on. I'm asking
your allies were telling me that I was dancing on the grave of my dead friend. Your allies were smearing me all over the place too. But I just muted everybody and moved on. I didn't hold you responsible for anything else anybody else said. I muted everybody and moved on.
So Briahna, I'm never going to concede that it was 50-50. I don't. If I
didn't say it.
He was aggrieved more. Two people who used to be friends, because remember Jimmy Dore used to be on TYT, two people who used to be friends, two people who are economically doing fine, want us, not even two, those are the two people involved, but one of the two peoples want us to get involved with playing Captain Save a TYT, Captain Save a Cenk. Otherwise, we can't be in coalition with him. This is the bar that Cenk is setting for coalitionship with him. Our bar is stuff like not committing a genocide. His is not teaming up with a comedian from Southern California. One's serious, one's not. Let's get to the next thing, and the next thing is just as ridiculous. And that is, if you haven't seen it, I'm done with this. It's too much of his own. Like, that entire interview was just about him. That's all he was interested. Everything, he's the victim. Everything is about him. It's just preposterous. But it did give us an ability to talk about coalitioning and the types of coalitions. Right now, the pro-Palestinian movement is a type of coalition, a single issue coalition that we're doing right now. Let me put this in here because I'm going to use this. But we're going to go to the Norman Finkelstein versus Destiny debate, and I'm going to play a couple of videos here. for this. So let me find them first before I set this up. There's a couple. So the debate we're not going to get to the Ben Shapiro stuff. I thought it was time, but there's no way I'm going to have time to get to that. So let's start with this video here. Actually, we're going to start here. Oops. I hate how it does this and puts it over here on the side. All right, so we're going to start with this video here. And it's where we got the title for this segment. Now, I think of the RBN members, I would say probably Rome and me, possibly JB. We know the least about these sort of big viral sort of I guess they call them left, like the Destinies, the Vouches, what's his name? Piker, some guy, Hassan Piker guy. Like, I don't know them. I don't know their content. I don't know how many years they've been. I don't know them well. I just know that this guy is supposedly a big debater. All the debates I've seen, he hasn't been good. So this just makes me not want to be a part of the Debate Me Bro world, because a lot of the Debate Me Bro world is, I would say the vast majority of it is not good. It's people who can't debate well, people who don't know the knowledge. And apparently Destiny's one of those people who don't know the knowledge, and he's going against a person who has a lot of knowledge in Norman Finkelstein. But he completely destroys this person known as Destiny. Let's listen to this first clip here. There's a couple of clips we're going to play.
That is exactly.
You have not read him.
What he said.
I've read him.
You don't understand him. He's sitting right here.
Believe me, I'm a lot more literate than you, Mr. Borelli.
I'm going to believe the guy that wrote the
read
stuff.
What Wikipedia said.
That's great.
I
and you don't even speak Hebrew, and you call yourself an Israeli historian. We're all here on different grounds. Okay?
I just want, if I can just respond.
Well, no, I'm just saying that there were two tricks. That's fine.
Mr. Bennell, don't change the subject. If you don't know what you're talking about, at least have the humility. You talk about
how close has 242 gotten? How close has 242 gotten to the Palestinians?
So, what I've noticed in the tactics with this particular person, Destiny, this is probably the third debate that I've seen of him, or part of a debate, is that he completely tries to drown out the person talking, not with points. When you hear him, you don't hear him. It's not like two people are talking with points. You have one person talking about a point that's not stopping, and the other person just keeps repeating stuff because they just don't want people to hear you making a point. So he's just shouting the same sentence over and over as to prevent your audio from being very clear. This is a strategy that a lot of these Debate Me Bros use. In particular, I've seen Destiny use this all the time. So, there's other videos where it's a little bit clearer. So, but let's continue.
We're all here on different grounds. Okay?
I just want, if I can just respond.
Well, no, I'm just saying that there were two tricks. That's fine.
Mr. Bennell, don't change the subject. If you don't know what you're talking about, at least have the humility. You talk about
how close has 242 gotten? How close has 242 gotten to the Palestinians' peace?
From tweet 5. You have no idea what you're talking about. It's just so embarrassing. At least have some humility. Between us, we've read maybe 10,000 books on the topic, and you've read 2 Wikipedia entries, and you start talking about chapter 6. Do you know what chapter 7 is?
Answer me.
That is exactly. You have not read him.
What he said.
Largely, this Debate Me Bro world is just white guys with large platforms who understand doing debates, bringing controversy, brings them money. Destiny is one of those people. apparently. So this is gonna be hard to listen to all of this stuff. It's gonna be hard. So let's go to another clip of him. And a lot of them are just like that, where it's just a lot of speaking over. There's a couple of clear points. I'm trying to find the right one. Okay, so let's go to this one right here at the top here. This is the one we're going to play.
That's a good point. No, it's a good point.
Now, some people...
What the fuck just happened here? Twitter is a piece of work here. Let's just say that. Twitter is a piece of work here. All right, so it's this one that's quote tweeted I'm trying to get back to. So let's see if it plays now. All right.
A good point.
Now, some people accuse me of speaking very slowly, and they're advised on YouTube to turn up the speed 2 to 3 times whenever I'm on. One of the reasons I speak slowly is because I attach value to every word I say.
Norm will say this all over and over and over again. I only deal in facts. I don't deal in hypotheticals. I only deal in facts. I only deal in facts. And that seems to be the case, except for when the facts are completely and totally contrary to the particular point you're trying to push. The idea that Jews would have out of hand rejected any state that had Arabs on it or always had a plan of expulsion is just betrayed by the acceptance of the 47 partition
plan. I don't think you understand politics.
They forced the British to prevent emigration of Jews from Europe and reaching safe shores in Palestine.
Well,
That's what they did.
And
they knew that the Jews were being persecuted in Europe.
Was Palestine the only spot of land on earth?
Yes, basically that was the problem. The Jews couldn't emigrate anywhere else.
What about your great friends in Britain, the architects of the Balfour Declaration?
By the late 1930s,
what about the United States?
They weren't happy to take in Jews, and the Americans weren't happy to take in Jews.
And why are Palestinians, who are not Europeans, who had zero role in the rise of Nazism, who had no relation to any of this, why are they somehow uniquely responsible for what happened in Europe and uniquely
close the only safe haven for Jews?
Professor Morris, because of your logic, and I'm not disputing it, that's why October 7th happened.
Oh my God.
Because there was no options left for those people.
So, the reason I'm not playing the entire debate, because a lot of this is largely about, it's like an hour and 40 something minutes or something like that. A lot of it is debating this historical stuff and do they have the right and all this stuff, and it is largely fine with or largely kind of just say, okay, we're going to start at this point with sort of the white power structure having the power to give this Palestinian land to anyone, because that's what happened. And I'm not interested in sort of the details of that. It is just very simple for me. The Palestinians have the right of self-determination. At the time Israel was created as a country, the British was the one controlling them. The British is the one who says that this can be called Israel. The Britons don't have the right to do that. So I don't care anything about the Balfour, none of that. The land belongs to the Palestinians and you get off. That's it. Not really interested in all, but I was interested in just sort of the debating style of, what was in, and that's why I just want to just play some of the clips. But let's play a little bit longer clip. This one is with Nick, and actually, let me see if I have one last. I might have one last one here. But I do want to play this one because Nick also debated. Hang on a second. Let me make sure this is not the one.
At least have the humility. You talk.
No, that's the one I played. Let's get some reaction first. So here is Glenn Greenwald. I respect the building of one's own large online platform without relying on media corporations. But the fact that so many believe a person this shallow, they're talking about destiny, with knowledge this superficial and perspective this benign is some masterful debater and thinking is just embarrassing. It's the same thing I said. This is Destiny is supposedly this masterful debater and thinker. This person? That can only be true in some sort of fantasy debate me bro world. In the real world, this guy is looked at as a fraud and a charlatan and a doofus. So that's my overall take. Here is Nico House saying in let's listen for you to get the full understanding here. Listen to this here.
Do you read the case?
Yeah.
It is a highly special intent.
I'm going to ask you again.
Genocide. Yes.
Please stop displaying your imbecility.
Okay, I'm sorry if you think the declaration of the judge is imbecile.
Don't put on public display that you're a moron. At least
imbecility is the what Nico House was referring to. That's the new word. Imbecility might have just become my new favorite word. If you didn't hear, the ruling on Fannie Mae has come down. She can stay as long as her subordinate leaves. Let's play a couple of these here. I'm gonna play just a second here. Not those, not the ones you saw on your screen. This is the one I'm looking for here. So let's watch this debate with Nick and Destiny. This is pre-RBN.
The rights movement in its heyday was not popular. Like the bus sit-ins had like a 70% disapproval rate. So you don't advocate for things based on what, especially from my perspective, what white America tells us to. So ever since we started the defund the police movement, and ever since we started messaging, we started to educate people on what it actually means. Despite all the propaganda, like the last poll I saw, and it was the exit polls, you had like 55% independents that support the idea. 70% Democrats that support the idea. Now, I can really get in the weeds with you because I've co-founded 10 Demands and what our goal in actually defunding the police actually is, and abolishing of the police. But that's exactly what, like, the American people is exactly what we want. It's a process. And that's why a lot of those cities you mentioned that, quote unquote, defunding the police, they failed because they didn't follow the process. There is a road to abolition,
So how this came about, Nick put out something about defund the police or something like that, and Destiny said anybody wants to debate me. This wasn't planned at all. He just put out a call. Nick said this, and they came on a debate about defund the police, not understanding that Nick was the co-founder of 10 Demands. Nick was this person immersed in this information and who can come up with facts and statistics all in his head and have articles saved. He thought he was just some run-of-the-mill guy with surface information. The same critique that was leveled against him in some of those tweets and by Norman Finkelstein is that he has surface level, by Glenn Greenwald, he has surface level understanding of these issues, the stuff that they just see in TV. It just doesn't work when you debate somebody with deep knowledge on the topic like a Norman Finkelstein on Palestine and Israel, and Nick on defund the police and 10 Demands.
That is an easy transition because people always ask, what are your guys' plan for this? So once we actually explain that plan, and once people actually, it's all about resource management. Like the same people who are not, they're not confused when it comes to defunding education, but we talk about defunding the police, which, like, we spend more on the police than every other country except China does on their military. Like before the Ukraine war, the new NYPD spent more on their police budget than the Ukrainian military. Like these are things that, like if you're a fiscal conservative, how can you rap with this stuff? Especially considering, like you said, crime is up. So they are not providing, they are not doing their mandate. And that's all you have to explain to people. Why we spend this much money when the police is not even solving crime? this one simple question, and the fact that people are inherently shifting to the left, despite what you're saying. If you have 55% independents, 74% of Democrats, they support our goal, our ask of shifting funding. Then once we do that, then we got another plan after that. But y'all don't have to know that, because once you decrease the police and you fund the programs that historically been proven to drop crime, once crime drops, as we predict it will.
Well, I don't think there are ways to like predict that. I think there's a few things that like point to small decrease, but like what's like the surefire ways to like reduce crime? Like what are the surefire funding ways to do that?
Because as someone who do not have this inherent bigoted and racist belief that some people are irredeemable, I believe if you provide for people, and this has been shown in small scale studies, providing housing, healthcare, increased wages, actually a functioning society, because we don't live in a functioning society unless you in the like top 5%, right?
Well, so I think that most people in America are living in a pretty functioning society.
No, well, if you like the 60% of workers that live in paycheck to paycheck, I don't know when the last time you had to, but that is not easy existence. And I'm speaking as someone who's a member of the proletariat, someone who grew up broke, who I literally housed 3 people in the last 2 years who otherwise would have been homeless.
Sure, and that, I mean, like there are
who worked 70 hours a week, but he was literally on the verge of being homeless, can't afford a car. What kind of existence is this? We live pathetic lives. People literally work 60 hours a week. They come home, they watch Netflix, and they think we live in advanced society. How we advance? We don't have health care. How we advance if people can't travel? How we advance if people don't have family paid maternity leave? That's decolonizing your mind. The things that you guys think make you happy is not, which is why depression rates is through the roof, which is why they subscribe you guys these pills.
Yeah, this guy wasn't sure what to expect when he brought Nick on, and then Nick just was a mile a minute, and it almost felt at times that the guy was uninterested. But this is when debate me bros debate people with real issues. You see how they're not really into it. It was just a white guy debating him on defund the police. He would be able to say a lot of nonsense shit that he's probably not going to say debating Nick, somebody who's actually part of the working class, somebody's part of the working check to check crowd. But he largely seemed uninterested for most of that, for at least this part that I showed you here. Let me see what else I have here. That's just about it. I do want to go back to a couple of things here. I want to let me see if I could do it a different way. Instead of me covering up myself, let's see, how about I just go to the graphic and do it that way. So I do want to talk some more about unity, about possible unification of the left, just a couple of more things on it, more just having a conversation, all of us having a conversation on it. So let's put up the graphic here and talk about it. So yeah, we're gonna move off of this here. Let's put up something else here. Let's put up this. Let's put up. So the pro-Palestinian movement illustrates the possibilities of what the left can do, and you're seeing it in the streets. Because I would say these people make up the people that are on the streets protesting. You've seen Cornel West several times on protest. You've seen Jill Stein in protest. You've seen Briahna. She didn't show her face, but I know she recorded being at a protest before. You've seen her there. You've seen Nick there. You've seen all the RBN members. We recorded ourselves from there. Jimmy Dore, I believe, has been to one. Of course, you've seen Do Dissidents on the ground. I'm not sure Emma, Crystal, and Kyle or Sam that I've seen, or even the Vanguard boys I've seen. Maybe they have, and I just haven't seen the content, but at least they support the action. So what we largely agree, everybody you see, in this picture, what we largely agree on is preventing a genocide, preventing the killing of innocent civilians. That's the largest issue in this, the largest point that we agree on. There are other details that we don't, like whether Hamas is a terrorist organization, whether October 7th was a terrorist act or a military exercise. So there's a lot of disagreement, but we do agree on that part. And what that manifests into, along with non-establishment and other humane people, is the protest that you see, that you've been seeing for several months on this. But when we're talking about a broader coalition, is just not possible. Let me just go around the picture just to give you an example. And I'll start with Kyle Kulinski. So Kyle Kulinski, let's just do them separately. Kyle Kulinski was for supporting the Ukraine war in the beginning. If you remember the content he did, when AOC, Jose Vega, protested AOC, and then Kyle Kulinski came out with some content saying how he didn't like this and how this wasn't real anti-war protests. And in that video, he mentioned how, I support up until this point, but maybe we need to start seeing where this money is going. At this point, this is enough. I think it was around 60 billion, because I remember Nick saying that word at the time. So that video, we were around 60 billion had been sent to Ukraine, and he was fine with that amount going. We're anti-war from the jump on Ukraine. So that stance makes us incompatible to be allies on the fight against imperialism and the U.S. empire. Let's move down to Emma Vigeland. Emma Vigeland said, if anything at all, the reason you're voting for Jim Crow Joe is for climate alone. That's what Emma said. Even though Joe Biden is doing so much wrong on climate, with oil permits, with allowing projects to go through, like the Willow Project and the other project that Joe Manchin had, the Nord Stream pipeline blowing up. You see the contradictions that prevent us from having a broader coalition with all, it's not a possibility because of these contradictions, because of these differences. With the video earlier from Marxist Paul said, paper overing the very deep differences in ideology and thinking. Then you have Sam Cedar, who has Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome. So you would have to assume that means they could never team up. Cenk and Sam and Anna will never be cool with Jimmy Dore, apparently. And then you have the Vanguard boys who largely push John Fetterman, who was a staunch supporter of Israel and said he was going to lean into Israel before October 7th. They said, that's a single issue. It's okay. Now that single issue has gotten us to 30,000 dead bodies, when it's really, we should be quoting more like 100,000 when we're talking about missing. So, and the Vanguard boys on a bunch of other things, and they largely are just here for entertainment. They're just ambulance chasers, not really here for the real fight. Nina Turner just is a person who is fine with teaming up with the Democratic Party, and who largely is still going to be aligned with them, which presents another problem. We are post-duopoly. What sort of coalition, if as a post-duopolist, we believe one of the core issues is the two parties, how do you coalition with somebody who says, I want to be a part of the team that we're saying is the core issue, these two parties? Then you have Cornel West, and you've already seen the critiques we've had of Cornel West. And Cenk Uygur, of course, taking the 20 million. And also Cenk Uygur being part of the NATO left, wanting to And you saw the video we played of him talking about sanctioning Russia. I think it was right before they invaded, sanctioning Russia. So he's pro-war and an imperialist. So because the differences aren't on like small issues, it prevents a larger, broader coalition. A small issue would be like, believe it or not, a small issue would be Medicare for all. I don't think we should have Medicare for all. I think we should have national health care. Those are small differences. What's not a small difference is anything involving the military and industrial complex, anything involving NATO, anything involving dropping bombs, anything involving the killing of people, innocent people, anything involving stealing resources. I mean, come on. That is not something we can get on board with. So the broader coalition can never be because of that. Let's see what some of you are saying here. I'm going to toss up this. These Dems are not going to help with countries like the Congo, Sudan, and Haiti. They can barely stay on task with Palestine. ARJ 1997, thank you for the super chat. Another one by ARJ. The PMC Dems are deeply unserious. Yes. Then we have Vicky Blair gifted 10 RBN memberships. Wow. 10 of you can get some new RBN memberships on Vicky Blair. Thank you for that. Here's another RBN brand new member, Heidi. Welcome, Heidi. Brand new member. And then we have KDK7. KDK7, I believe that is what that says. And sure, Ryan Grimm may have conceded those points about forced to vote only after forced to vote. Right. That's the point that Brie should take, is that coming to a realization after the fight is over does what? What does that do? Do first, apologize later. Right. That is such a great point. There. Let's see what the next one is. And then I'll just show the other ones. I don't need to read them because I read them earlier. Another brand new member. So thank you for all of the super chats. Let's get into the regular chat and see what people are saying. What say you about a possible reunification or unification, whatever you say? Now, if this were, I don't know who else will be the reunification. But I don't see the Bernie Sanders coalition coming back together. I don't see like if Bernie Sanders didn't betray the movement and just leave it high and dry, it could have been salvaged. But him just kind of dropping off the map, the rightward shift of left politics, elected left politics, and how the Bernie Sanders coalition kind of just went right with them. All of these things is preventing sort of a broader coalition. But on the bigger things, hopefully we can come together, like Palestine, or at least a genocide, because the broader Palestine, we still have critiques of some of these people like Crystal and their approach to some of the dialogue. So let's bring this down. All right, so this is going to be it for me. Hit that like button. 800 is our goal. Here's our website. Always have this scrolling down at the bottom when we start. Let me put the website up there. It's revolutionaryblackoutnetwork.com. On the website, you can check out things like chapters. So when you click on RBN chapters, it gives you like what our goals are. We launched in May 2023. That's what that is. It gives us like what our goals are across all 5. It doesn't mean these are the goals at each but we put the goals at all 5 each chapter, and we put them together, and that is what you see there. Then you come down and you see some of the chapters, the Boston one, the Orlando one, and then the corresponding RBN member. Mine is likely going to change from Long Beach when I move. So mine is going to be an RBN. So RBN Long Beach is going to change to a different city whenever I move, which will be in the next couple of months here. You can also go check out the RBN library that's being renovated in Detroit. This is what it looked like in the beginning. Then it has some sort of some pictures you can scroll through of the work they've been doing. So you can go to our website and check all of this out. You can also go check out our summits. So you can go check out our content from some of the summits. That's some of our old members. Look at who used to be part of our crew when we used to be called the FHL. Our first summit was the General Strike Summit, which was probably, I still consider that's probably our best summit, was the General Strike Summit. Fantastic summit that we pulled off. If you are able to contribute $36 a year, $3 a month, become a Patreon user at the $3 monthly fee, and help with our editor. We pay her a equal share out of the Patreon money, and she does graphics like this, graphics like these, graphics like these, graphics like these, all done by our editor. So if you think that work is great, become a Patreon member. And then the last thing is, when you go to our website and you click RBN merchandise, it brings you here and you can check out mugs. So we have mugs, we have sweatshirts, we have hoodies, we have tote bags. But here goes some mugs here. You see the RBN signature logo, then you see the completely unserious mug and the abolish police mug. Let's see if there's more this way. Anyway. And then down here you got the vote blue no matter who is for morons mug. This is a abolish the police mug there, and this is an ACAB mug. The lesser of two evils mug, and then we got the post-duopoly mug, and we got the oops, let me put the names on the top. The post-duopoly voter mug, and then the Democrats and Republicans can kiss my ass. Yeah, that's what that one says, that mug. You can get these same logos on tote bags. You can get these same logos on hoodies, like here. And our RBN logo is our most popular. You can get it in a couple of different colors here. So make sure you check it out. Nick has the red one. I'm either going to get black or green. Eventually, I'm going to get those. So check those out on our website. Hit that like button on your way out. Thank you for watching. Oh, I got one more super chat that I will read here. Looks like one more came in. There we go. Janice is the other one we lean on. Janice says the 30K mainstream media keeps quoting is from over a month ago. There has been hundreds more each day. Seems they stopped counting. Probably 100K. Hold on a second. Probably 100K by now. I'm sorry, probably 100 to 200K by now. Yes, the 30,000 is an old number. So that is absolutely true, Janice. Thank you for that. And did I read this one? Yeah, I read that one. All right, so I think now that's all of our super chats. And now I'm going to get going here. Let's go to, what do I have up? I play. Looking for something to play here. As an outro, let's go to YouTube. Let's go to I have a lot of stuff here. Oh wow, I better not play that one. CIA is a terrorist organization. Yeah, but I better not play that one. I'm saving that for an actual stream I want to do on that topic. I thought I saved a Glenn Greenwald video. Maybe I did not. Yeah, right. All right. So second thought, majority report. Yeah, I guess I did not save it. The second thought, CIA is a terrorist organization. That actually has it. You can't just click on it and it plays it. You gotta like agree to some shit to even watch it. So I thought that was kind of funny. But we're gonna end on this one. It says Sam Cedar says oops. Is this it? Come on now. Democrats are just making their problems worse. This is Sam Cedar. And a majority report with
Biden's
Emma,
poll numbers are not doing well.
All right, everybody. I'm going to leave you
say,
with this funny video.
Well,
Take it as humor.
Maybe the electorate is going to be a different than we know. And
realizing the Biden administration keeps making bad decisions. So, all right. Give your shout outs. Let me know what city and state and country you're in. If you're shouting out something in the comments, let me know what city, state, and country you're in.
There's still plenty of time.
See you later.
But there's a lot of things that suggest that the Biden administration is just simply not getting it. And I think one of the things that is, obviously is highly problematic is well, I think the biggest thing that Biden is wrestling with is what is our support for the onslaught and slaughter essentially in Gaza. If anything, in addition to the fact that I think we're at a majority of Americans now think that there should be a ceasefire. Certainly the voters that Joe Biden's looking for overwhelmingly support a ceasefire. But even if that is not enough to influence people's voting, the engaged people who are engaged in politics, who would otherwise be going out and organizing on behalf of Biden, regardless of whether they thought he was the peak choice, as it were, the optimal choice, are not doing so. You have the Biden administration or the Biden campaign just reported the other day in CNN that they're having to basically avoid protests, which means they're not going to college campuses.
Yep.
They're not driving out the youth vote. They're not going into places where they may encounter protesters about Gaza. This is a real problem. The other, I think, sort of like broader problem that Biden has is about leadership. He has ceded the territory of leadership to Donald Trump, if you ask me, by doing stuff like this. Here's Chris Murphy, sort of exemplifying the mindset, the mind virus that Democrats have. New polling showing that when Democrats explain how Republicans killed the toughest border bill in decades, Republicans' 15-point advantage on the border disappears. Time to go on the offense team.
A link to a Third Way article.
Well, I mean, putting aside the fact that it's the worst people in the world are promoting this, go to the front page of Atrios. I mean, I've gone on this rant before, but I just want to read what Atrios writes, which is exactly the case. Fighting in enemy territory. He writes, I know how this works. They run dumb focus groups. Focus groups are almost always dumb in politics, from which they learn that if they patiently explain to voters in that closed environment that Trump sabotaged the bipartisan border deal, which was tougher than any border deal in decades, then those voters nod their heads and say, wow, bad Trump. They conclude they have a winning issue. Then those voters leave the containment field and go home and turn on Fox. The focus group itself is made up of a group of people who have expressed concerns about the border, providing this feedback loop for all involved. More broadly, focus groups can tell you if a particular advertising pitch might work bring a group of soda lovers together in a room and ask them if this particular pitch will get them to buy Pepsi instead of Coke. It does not tell you that the soda question is the burning question on everybody's mind.
Yes.
If you go on the campaign and start talking about nothing but the soda question, you alienate the people who never drink that crap. Also, Coke has better brand appeal as a soda, not everything, and 20 times the advertising budget, and you can't get everybody in the focus group room to pitch this one-on-one. There is no effective retort to Pepsi Schmepsi.
Atrios is the best.
Also, this isn't polling, it's push polling.
Incredible. Yeah.
I mean, so the bottom line is more or less what I've been saying for a while is that when you start to adopt the framing that the border's in crisis, all you're doing as Joe Biden is saying, A, the crisis happened on my watch. There's a crisis. I'm not doing anything about it. But then you say, but the reason why I'm not doing about it is because I can't get Congress to do what I want them to do. And then the answer as to why you can't do that is because Donald Trump can get them to do what he wants them to do. In other words, I'm failing on a leadership level.
I mean, the opening part of this third way piece that he's linking to, which is like embarrassing that Chris Murphy is linking to this as somebody who like tries at least in some ways to be left of center of Democrats in the Senate. Artificially. I mean, in the end, he ended up voting for the supplemental to send all that money to Israel, despite the tough talk. At the beginning, like one of the takeaways of this focus group, while Republicans start with a 15-point advantage on their approach